Obviously, we're going to have a ton of fun doing so. Now on the stream, the phone lines lighting up as well. Listen, man, we're excited that this new show is creating some buzz in the upstate. We know that everyone has different opinions about what you like. You know, some shows are for some people, and some people would rather not listen to this person or that person. We get that. That's just the way people are, right? However, we are excited about the buzz that this show has created. And speaking of buzz, all the text, we're going to get to those, the phones as well. Alex, our first caller of the day. What's up, Alex?
Well, I'm just sorry that he cut off his mullet because he had a mullet rocking until middle of last week, and he ruined that, Cole. You ruined it. You look like a college baseball player with that mullet you had rocking.
Listen, I had to shape it up, get ready for the first day of work. You know, man, couldn't come in here with long hair on the first day. Alex, listen, you put up with me during football. Now it's Diesel's turn to put up with me. That's true.
Hey, you got any tips? There's nothing we can do about the smell, but if you got any other tips for me for dealing with Cole Bryson.
I'm glad I didn't have to turn around and use the dump button for the first time today, Alex. We appreciate
Thank you, Alex.
man. We sure do. Thanks for the call. You can get in touch with the program. Diesel and I will both give out the number a lot on the program for you to be a part of the show. That's what we want. We want you to be a part of the show. 844-326-3663. That's 844-FAN phone. The text line, it's buzzing right now, Diesel. 71307. Start your message with FAN. Wonder how long it'll take me to memorize that so I don't have to pick up the whiteboard. You've been doing this a long time, so give me a couple of days to memorize it.
Well, it's okay. I got my cheat sheet over here too. I'm on 2 radio stations, so I got to remember which station I'm on when I do that. But look, we are committed here on this show, on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. We are going to bring you coverage that you don't typically hear, that you didn't hear in the past in this day part. We created, Cole, what you and I call a show Bible. It's like an industry term. This is what the show is about. This is the things that we do on the show. These are the things that we don't do on the show. And we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you guys want more Atlanta Braves content. I can guarantee you tomorrow on the show, there will be Atlanta Braves content. We know that you guys love Carolina Panthers content, and you're going to get on the show all week long. We know that you guys love high school football. I got the absolute best in the business at covering high school football in the upstate across from me. But of course, Cole, we know what stirs the drink.
What is it, Diesel? Let's hear
it.
What
Clemson
is it, baby?
and South Carolina. That's what stirs the drink here in the upstate of South Carolina. And that is going to be, I can promise you, the main focus of the show here, along with other regional college football with Clemson and South Carolina basketball, Carolina Panthers, the NFL, high school football, Atlanta Braves, NASCAR, Atlanta Falcons. All of that is going to get its time here on the show. And that's kind of what Wire to Wire means. You know, like they say, if a team scores the first bucket in a basketball game and they win the game, then they've led the game wire to wire.
Yep.
If you take the green flag to start the race and you win the race, you've won that race wire to wire. That is exactly what this show is. That's exactly what our promise to you is always going to be, is that we're going to cover all of these teams. We're going to bring you great guests. We're going to bring you hard-hitting opinions. And the truth is, Cole, you know, you and I, as we were doing our show prep for today's show, we already found that we differ in opinion in a couple of different places on the topics that we're going to bring up today, which include Brad Brownell, whether or not his job is safe after reaching the Sweet 16 with the Clemson Tigers. Our opinions about Shohei Ohtani and what should happen with him. We're going to cover that. And of course, I want to give people a heads up. Lawton Swan from Clemson Sports Talk will be on the show coming up at 5:20.
Without a doubt, there's going to be so much of opinion on the program, Diesel, that the audience, one of our goals is for them to feel like they can, you know, pick a side, choose a side right. Now, I'll tell you this, going off of what you were saying with Wire to Wire, you hit the nail on the head and described it perfectly. And the great thing about it is there are going to be, Diesel, something that you and I have talked about. We started talking about 2 or 3 weeks ago. There is going to be something happening at this station that I am super excited about that has never happened before in terms of what our audience will mean to us, the branding they'll have, the listenership they'll have. There's so much that we haven't unveiled that's coming that we want you to stay tuned for, almost wire to wire, right? You have to stay tuned, wire to wire, turn it on, leave it on. There's so much coming down the pipeline. I believe that this radio station has so much potential that hasn't been reached yet in terms of audience branding. That's something you and I have talked about. And I know I'm pulling the curtain back a little bit for our listeners, which is fine. But we want our listeners, you know, there are so many other stations who have done a good job of this. We want our listeners to feel like this is the show they have to listen to, wire to wire, turn it on, and leave it on all day long. We'll also have a ton of daily wires that we can drop in at any time, Diesel. I mean, today, as we referenced earlier, where do we even start with the daily wires today? You and I look at our show prep sheet. Clemson baseball, sweeping FSU. South Carolina baseball, sweeping Vandy. Maybe, I said it yesterday on Twitter, maybe the greatest non-football weekend ever for Clemson this past weekend, possibly in a long, long time. I'll be intrigued to ask Lawton his opinion on that, but non-football, Diesel, non-football. This could have been the greatest Clemson weekend in the history of Clemson athletics. You punch your ticket to the Sweet 16.
Yep.
You sweep Florida State, who was one of the better teams in the country. Not only do you sweep Florida State, the two games on Saturday and Sunday, the second and third game, you were down, and Sunday you were down by 9 runs, the largest deficit overcome by Clemson baseball since 1995. They came back twice to beat Florida State. A lot of college baseball that our listeners have reached out to you and I both and told us, listen, man, college baseball, we love it around here, especially when our teams are good, right? It helps when they're good. It helps when South Carolina's good. It helps when Clemson's good. South Carolina baseball, Clemson baseball, Diesel, that's something I'm excited to bring to the show because college sports, as you said, when you were going down the show Bible, as we call it, people love their South Carolina and Clemson in this area, right? And when those two teams are good, which this year they may, they may both be legit this season under Mark Kingston and Eric Backett. So what a time for us to kick this thing off and cover what could be a really fun spring sports season.
Yeah, and think about it this way too. We actually have a third elite baseball program in the state of South Carolina. Coastal Carolina is always really, really good. Now, they took it on the chin to my App State Mountaineers over the weekend. App State took 2 out of 3, went into extra innings in the third game, and Coastal just blew it wide open, I think, in the 11th or 12th inning.
I'm going to throw a fourth in there. I'm going to throw a fourth elite baseball. It's not Division I, but it's Division II, a former South Carolina Gamecock. The coverage that we're talking about continuing to give to college baseball and Landon Powell.
Excellent guy.
North Greenville.
Absolutely.
We've had him on many times, you and I have. Great interview, great coach, and South Carolina bred. And look what he's done up there. Won a national championship just up the road in division. I know it's Division II, but still, you're right. We do have some uber talented baseball teams in the program.
We do. It's we live in such a fortunate time and place in the state of South Carolina that we have elite athletics almost across the board. Like some years basketball will be down. Some years this sport will be down or that sport will be down. But think about it, man. We are in the Southeast. This is the hub. This is the center of college football power, of college baseball power. Right now, we got college basketball power with Clemson entering the Sweet 16. We'll see if they can continue that for years to come. I am still not sold that Brad Brownell should be brought back just because he's reached the Sweet 16. We'll get into that later on in the show. I've got my reasons. I've got my reasons for believing that.
I'm ready.
I've got that. So look, the audience knows just how good the sports scene in this area is. And we are committed on this show to building on that, to letting you guys know everything that's going on. We've got so many text messages coming in. We've got so many chats coming in on the YouTube stream. We are streaming on all platforms today. We are on Facebook. We are on Twitter. We are on YouTube. God, there's so many of these to get through. Spur Daddy, Trey Davis, JD, P Digits, all of you guys, James, April, Wesley. We appreciate all of you being in the stream early on in the show. And again, we want you to turn it on and leave it on. That is our request to you. As soon as the show starts at 3 o'clock, we want you to turn it on across whatever platform it is you like to watch or listen to the show. Turn it on at the beginning of the show and leave it on all the way to the end.
Let's go back to the phones, Diesel. Mongo wants to chime in on the new show. Go ahead, man. I appreciate it, man. I really do. I'm excited. I did not have that on my bingo card. So is there a little backstory behind this?
So that was one of our predecessors' rules of sports fandom. One of his weird DA takes, and I think you all know what DA stands for. His take was that you shouldn't be allowed to bank in a three-point shot because you didn't mean to, which is a ludicrous take. The goal is to get the ball in the hoop. It's buffoonery. Yeah, Pongo Bongo, you're right on, man. the goal is to get the ball through the hoop through any means necessary.
That is the absolute dumbest thing I've ever heard.
If people could be really good at slamming the ball into the ground really hard and making it go in, I want them to score that way too.
That is, yeah. So to start, no. If it goes in, I don't know. There's no way, Mongo, that any human being that says that, there's no way they're being serious. There's absolutely no way. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Well, listen, we appreciate the call. We'll continue to straighten things up here on this side. We appreciate it, Mongo. You can reach us 844-FAN phone. That's good stuff, man. That's good stuff. We'll have to revisit that. We'll continue to get to your calls as well. The phone lines are lit up, Diesel. They are lit, as the young ones say. Here on Wire to Wire, we're so excited for you to be a part of the program on the debut of Wire to Wire. All right, coming up next, the state of Clemson basketball. They are in the Sweet 16. You'll hear about it right here on Wire to Wire.
It's Wire to Wire, Diesel and Cole Bryson. One segment in the books, my friend. We are now officially show hosts.
Can you believe it, man?
It feels nice.
It does.
It feels nice to say it.
It does feel good. And man, the text messages and tweets and the messages on stream, man, we've had so much outpouring in that first segment. We appreciate you being a part of the program. As Diesel said, I'm Cole Bryson. He is Diesel. And boy, do we have a ton of content to get to on the program today. As Clemson last night, as I said just a moment ago, maybe the best non-football weekend of Clemson sports in a long time, Diesel. Did you think going into the weekend that we would be talking about maybe the most memorable and historic season for Clemson? When you look at what they did, obviously on the baseball field, and we'll get to that, but last night, punching their ticket, I have a page and a half of notes from last night's Baylor game. I do think that there are so many storylines within the game that you and I will get to. Obviously, them getting the win is huge. But if you would have told me, Diesel, and I'll start with this, if you would have told me last night that P.J. Hall would not have played the amount of minutes that he did, he came out with 6 or so to go in the first half, and then he got an early foul. Remember, in the second half, they had to go back. He had to go back to the bench. If you would have told me that P.J. would have been on the bench as much as he was, and Clemson would have still dominated. Now, toward the end of the game, what I thought was interesting was when P.J. came back, I thought, and I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but when P.J. came back on the floor last night for Clemson, I felt like that's when Baylor kind of crept back into the ball game. Again, don't take that the wrong way, but P.J. Hall last night not being on the floor didn't impact Clemson the way I thought it would have. Clemson dominated Diesel with P.J. Hall on the bench.
Well, I'm going to be real with you and tell you that I did not have Clemson making it out of the first round.
Right.
I picked New Mexico to win that game. I picked South Carolina to beat Oregon in their first round game. So, I mean, we're 100% wrong here. But the truth is, here's the great part. Here's a little secret I'm going to let everybody in on when it comes to filling out your brackets. Don't spend too much time on it because the experts spend a ton of time and their brackets get blown all to hell on the first day as well. So go with your gut, go with your heart. That's the way I pick my bracket. Now, I don't know about you. I didn't ask you to do this here, Cole, but I want to look at how good we did in our brackets in our first rounds and second round. I did actually pretty good. Now, the ones that I got wrong hurt me bad.
Yeah.
The ones that I got hurt me real bad. I had Auburn winning the national championship. But in the first round, I picked 68% of the games correct.
That's not bad.
In the second round, I still have 75% of my teams in this bracket.
Well, all that matters
I can't win the whole thing
because
you
have the winner still.
Yeah, I don't.
And you picked who to win?
I picked Auburn.
Well,
I picked Auburn to win the whole thing.
Bruce Pearl let you down there.
Yeah,
I picked UConn, so I'm still alive. I still feel pretty good about that pick. I didn't have Clemson in the Sweet 16, as you said. I don't think really anybody did. I think there were 1 or 2 analysts that I saw today who did say that Clemson could be maybe a little bit of a sleeper. Going against New Mexico, we thought that New Mexico would knock them out in the first round. Yeah. They dominated New Mexico. And then last night with Baylor, I thought they had a great start, Diesel. Watching that game, they get up 22-16 with 8:45 to go. There were several points in the game where you felt like maybe Baylor's going to creep back into this thing early, but Baylor never did, obviously, until late in the ball game. But at halftime, man, Baylor had 7 turnovers. Clemson was very much beating Baylor at their own game. Clemson had 9 assists last night on their 12 field goals at the half. 6 minutes and 16 seconds is when P.J. Hall sat in the first half and never came back in. So for them to beat Baylor last night, I think it says a lot about the makeup of the team. Obviously, Brownell, we all know he's going to be coaching, extra hard in these games because the reality of it is we know what expectations Clemson basketball has, and his expectation was to get to the tournament. However, I don't know that anyone saw him getting to the Sweet 16. What he'll do now going against Arizona, we'll get to that. However, I do think you have to give credit where credit's due last night, talking about that game and the way Clemson handled it down the stretch when Baylor did, bring the game back close. What I was impressed with, Diesel, was Clemson shot the ball really well last night.
They did. Very efficient.
48%, 3-point line, they shot 35%. Baylor only shot 25% from 3-point line. I think that the post-game analyst said it best, and Brownell hinted at it as well, but that game last night was won on Clemson's defense.
Sure.
And what do we say all the time? In the tournament, on the road, when you're playing in big games, what travels? Defense travels. Can they do it against Arizona? That'll be a tall task, right? But that defense last night from Clemson was phenomenal. I thought Godfrey's free throws down the stretch were really big. He wasn't really playing a good game. Godfrey wasn't. And then all of a sudden down the stretch, he hits those free throws, and Clemson goes on the win 72-64. But to me, Diesel, it was almost like Baylor at the end, but I don't want to say trying to throw up a prayer. They did hit some key shots, and Clemson, again, I think a lot of it had to do with P.J. Hall being on the bench and then coming back in, and maybe the chemistry seemed to be a little bit different when P.J. came back onto the floor late because he was on the bench for so much of the game. But from what you watched, I wanted to get your opinion. I want to hear the opinion of our audience as well. Were you surprised that P.J. Hall's impact wasn't felt greater than it was last night when he was on the bench?
Well, look, going back to the New Mexico game first, they came out playing with their hair on fire. They were a pissed off basketball team.
Yeah.
They had been told by pundit after pundit that they were going to lose that game. I mean, that was one of the most popular upset picks. So I'm proud of the way Clemson came out and just dominated that New Mexico team. Now, when they came into that Baylor game, these were two evenly matched teams. Over the last 10 games, both of these teams were 6-4. Clemson was slightly better defensively than Baylor was over the last 10 games, 67 points allowed to 73 points allowed. But what was really fascinating to me was just how butt-puckering the last 6 minutes of that game were. And I think a lot of Clemson fans, now some of you may say today, oh, no, this wasn't me. You're not talking about me and how I felt about this team. But I guarantee you, a lot of you saying that are lying. It felt like the same old song and dance that we'd heard from Clemson basketball time and time again, especially over the course of the season. You got out to that decent lead, and then you blow it down the stretch.
Well, I was worried, weren't you?
Yeah, you should have been worried. I mean, you were up 16 points if you're Clemson, up 16 points with 6 minutes to play in that game, and it got all the way down to 2 points with a minute to play. Now, I put this out on social media yesterday evening that said Clemsoning was real close to happening. You know,
no doubt. Listen, if it weren't for the 2 missed free throws from Baylor, it would have. I mean, the 2 free throws missed from Baylor were to tie the game.
Yes,
Diesel.
It was the 2 from Baylor that they missed.
29 seconds or something.
Good Lord, the clutch free throw shooting from a guy that they were saying shot in the high 50s over the course of the season. R.J. Godfrey, that guy is not a particularly good free throw shooter, and he looked good on those 4 shots. It's not like they were kind of close. They bounced in. You got a lucky roll. No, R.J. Godfrey was bottom of the bucket 4 times out of 4. So clutch down at the end of the game there. I mean, that is so huge.
It was
such a confidence builder. You know, that idea of, oh no, here we go again.
Who would have thought it was going to be him though?
Yeah, that's true. Clemson were 2-5 in one possession games going into yesterday's game.
Yeah.
2-5. Now, I don't know if the scorers would call that a one possession game, but it was within 2 points with a minute to play. So in my mind, no matter how they score that thing, that was a one possession game, and that team showed a hell of a lot of fight. Now, when P.J. Hall fouled out with 35 seconds to go, man, I thought that was a weak ass foul. I don't like the way the end of these games
was that
are
the one
going.
where he ran through the guy?
Yeah, they were fighting for the ball. PJ didn't he
put
body into
it. They caught a fifth on him earlier that they went back and fixed.
He put body into the guy. That is true, but they were both throwing, they collided, okay?
Yeah.
It's not like the player there had the ball and PJ elbow checked him or body checked him, and it was a clear and obvious foul. I thought that was a weak call. I don't like the way ends of games are going these days. I mean, anybody watching games knows that the last 2 minutes of a game is going to slow down to an absolute crawl, and I hate it. They are reviewing everything these days. It's ruining the flow of the end of the game. Like, of course, it's important to get things right at the end of the game. We all want them to get things right, but come on. You and I can see in the replay, all we got to do is take 1, maybe 2 looks at it, and we know what's going on. But look, I thought it was over. I thought it was curtains. I thought Baylor had just put on a run there with the last 6 minutes to play, and they were going to end up winning that game by 5 or 6. So
Well,
a lot of credit goes to Clemson down the stretch.
Without a doubt. But let me ask you this, Diesel, and I had a texter point this out, and this is a great point. If I would have told you last night, Diesel, that at the 6:41 mark in the ball game, Clemson would make their last field goal with 6:41 to go. They made their last field goal. How confident would you be that Clemson's going to come out of that thing with win 6.5 minutes plus with not a field goal? Obviously, they hit some crucial free throws, but that is unreal.
Yeah, that's
not good.
That's an ugly stretch. And hey, you are lucky as hell to have won that game. Okay, you are lucky as hell to have won that game, and that to me falls on Brad Brownell. That falls on coaching. Look, you can't go 6 minutes without a bucket and expect to win tournament games. You're lucky that it happened. And that's one of the reasons why I'm still not completely convinced that Brad Brownell should be back next season. Now, I know you have a differing opinion. We're going to get into that later on into the show. But, like, hey, you got lucky. And, hey, this is the NCAA tournament, baby. There is all kind of madness going on. Survive and advance. Win by any means necessary.
That's right.
Win via the Hail Mary 3-point shots. Win via free throws. Whatever it is you do to win basketball games, do it.
Well, last night that's what it was last night. Free throws and defense. Yeah. That's what it was. And for them to go 6:41, 6 minutes and 41 seconds without a field goal, I would not have put my money on Clemson at all. Not at all.
No, and if they played that game out 10 more times, you would probably say that Baylor wins that game most of the time.
For sure.
71307, start your text with keyword fan. That's how you can reach out to the show. Texter says, Diesel out from behind the glass. Let's go. Texter says, if a home run counts off the foul pole, then a three-pointer counts off the glass. It's absolutely right. I can't understand the people who say, and by people I mean Mark Ryan, who say things like, three-pointers that are banked in shouldn't count because you didn't intend to do it. Spur Daddy texts in and said Brownell will be at Clemson at least 3 more seasons
Wire2Wire.
max. So you're saying, Spur Daddy, that you give him through the 2027 season and he's gone. Now, this is what's interesting. The 2026 season is the last season on Brad Brownell's contract. But I believe that short of maybe making the Final Four, that Graham Neff and co. need to go ahead and pull the trigger on. I know, but I'm going to give you evidence.
Listen at 5 o'clock.
I'm going to give you evidence for this coming up at 5 o'clock.
There we go.
Okay, I'm not just spouting this to stir the pot. I can promise you.
Final Four.
Oh
my word, Diesel. That might be the dumbest thing I've heard today.
Well, the show is just beginning, sir. We've got lots of times to say more and more dumb things on the show, and we want to hear your dumb things. 71307, start your text with keyword fan. Do us a favor, though. Make sure you sign your texts. Here's a new little show rule for you. If you're trying to text in anonymous, if you're trying to be a scared little worm hiding behind a text line and not sharing your name, we might not read your text messages, okay? We need you to put yourself out there.
Fake name.
We don't know. You can come up with on the planet. We have P1 names. You can give us your dog's name. You can give us your son's name. We don't know. We have to take your word for it. Just do us a favor and make sure you sign your texts every single time you text into the show. That is very, very important. How busted is your bracket? Well, mine is blown out of hell. We want to know how busted yours is. Cole and I run through our brackets, our picks, and the DA picks that we have made up until this point. That's next on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson on the Fan Upstate. My bracket has been ripped to shreds by a cougar. Oh, wait, is that a little too soon? Those two kids in
That's
California that were attacked by a cougar while out picking up elk
Their
antler
bracket?
sheds.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm saying my bracket has been shredded like them.
No, I don't think that's too soon.
Not too soon. Maybe it wasn't a smart plan.
Kids got shredded by a cougar?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe that is too soon.
Yeah, not the female kind, not the middle-aged, still
Maybe
kind
that
of
is
hot
too soon.
cougar.
That's
I'm talking
rough,
about the literal.
That's
cougar.
rough.
Yeah, that was a rough thing. But hey,
Didn't have
maybe
that on bingo card.
maybe it's not smart to go out in the woods without any form of protection.
Yeah, that's true.
That's just me. That's just my own personal opinion. You got opinions you want to share? Then share them on the fan phone line. The renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone, 844-326-3663, emanating live here from the Ingalls Markets studios at 25 Garlington Road in Greenville. By the way, we're going to be at Ingalls Markets, 410 Pelzer Highway in Easley on Wednesday.
Let's go.
I'm excited about that. The show will be out there live from 3 to 7. Can't wait. I know that you know Melissa Level and Ruby Downs and the crew out there because you did your Saturday morning scramble show out there, and they are fantastic people. And man, I can't tell you how stoked I am to get out there. But we want to know from you just how fast and how hard was your bracket bent over a barrel, because mine got absolutely destroyed on day one. Thanks a lot to those smart so's and so's over at Yale. They beat Auburn, who I had winning the whole damn thing.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I don't know how well, like the percentage-wise of people who still have teams in their bracket. That's the way I choose to look at how well I've chosen. I mean, like my bracket's already wrecked from Auburn being eliminated, but in the first round, I chose 68% of teams correctly.
Well,
and I still have 75% of my teams in the second round, or in the Sweet 16, excuse me. I've still got 75% of those teams in. The problem is so many of the teams that I have making deep runs have been eliminated.
If anybody tells you they picked Yale over Auburn,
liars.
They may have, but there's no way like somebody sits there and says, oh, yeah, I really think Yale could get them because they match up with them. No, Auburn was playing some of the best basketball, coming into the tournament. Much was Kentucky. Auburn was a team that we thought would be at least in the Final Four, right?
Yeah.
I think most people, you had them winning it. I think most people had them at least getting to the Elite Eight, maybe Final Four. I've got that one wrong. I got Duquesne over BYU wrong, Diesel.
Yep, I got that wrong.
I don't really think anybody picked that one that I know of. I did pick New Mexico over Clemson, as I said a minute ago. So I was wrong there. Did you pick A&M over Nebraska or Nebraska over A&M? Because I actually did take.
I had A&M.
Okay.
Yeah, I had A&M over Nebraska. I got my bracket got torched. Number one by Auburn because I had them winning the national championship. Number two by Texas Tech, who I had making it all the way to the Elite Eight, beating Marquette here in the Sweet 16. But obviously Texas Tech goes down to NC State, and what a phenomenal story that is. A program that they don't really know what they are, right? NC State,
they're hot, man.
Have fancied themselves a football school. They fancied themselves a basketball school. They're not really sure what they are. By far, one of the most elite logos in college athletics. I love that old school Wolfpack look. I love that logo, but it's a school that has always kind of rode the fence. What do they want to be? And I think there's a lot of similarities between NC State and South Carolina, the way that the fan base kind of rides that fence. Are we a football school? Are we a basketball school?
Let me stop you. I didn't mean to interrupt, Diesel, but when have people ever thought NC State was a football school?
You ask them. Ask them. Trust me, they believe that they are a football school. A lot of the pundits, as a matter of fact, a guy that we bring on the show quite a bit, Kelly Ford, is very high on NC State.
And football.
Going into I know, right? It sounds weird to say.
And y'all bring him on that. What?
Yeah, he's actually quite good. Look, he is an impartial passenger in what the numbers tell him. Okay. The numbers tell him that NC State, football-wise, in 2024 should be pretty good. But yeah,
wow.
Texas Tech was the big killer for me. I had Baylor advancing out of this round, as a matter of fact, beating Arizona in the and making the Elite Eight. They're losing to North Carolina. But Auburn, Baylor, Texas Tech to this point are the three teams that have really hurt my bracket.
You're forgetting one. The biggest. I actually was in Louisville to see Louisville's reaction to this because they hate Kentucky so much. Oakland taking down Kentucky.
What a great story.
In the first, great story.
What a great
story.
They
almost did it again, but NC State was a little too much. I will say this. There's so much. This could be a whole topic, and we're going to get to the callers in a minute. But this could turn into several topics because I've heard a lot of Kentucky fans, Diesel, with Calipari. This is borderline intriguing from a South Carolina native standpoint. And the reason I say that is, like, normally someone who lives in South Carolina really wouldn't have vast interest in Kentucky basketball. But the way that this contract is set up, and you and I were talking about this earlier, a lifetime, I'm using air quotes when I say lifetime because it was a 10-year deal for Calipari.
He had the deal that Joe Paterno had, just stay here, be a mascot, wave your hand.
And retire. That was the whole goal, was for him to do the 10 years, win a national championship, and retire, right? He'd be 69. He signed it when he was 59. He'd be 69 at the end of the 10 years. Every Kentucky pundit, basketball fan, analyst, Diesel, everyone that I've heard from, they're done. Like, they are. There's no one I have heard from a national or local media outlet that's defending that guy. You want to talk about Brownell and South Carolina, and I get it, they're local, but that is a huge story because I don't know that there is one single person who covers Kentucky basketball or is a fan of Kentucky basketball who thinks that guy should still have a job. However, you can't fire him. I mean, $56 million buyout or something like that. What are you going to do?
Yeah, there's about 320 other programs that would love for Kentucky to be dumb enough to fire John Calipari.
Yeah, but like, how do you? I agree with you, but how do you explain getting bounced so many times now, like he has? 2 tournament wins in 5 years? I mean, that's unbelievable, man.
Yeah, I mean, with the number one, the facilities, with the cachet, with the history, with the recruiting that Kentucky has, I mean, it is unforgivable to throw you back to one of the early YouTube videos on that platform. It is unforgivable.
Yeah.
For John Calipari to be getting bounced early in the tournament the way that he has. I mean, is the answer youth? Because
that's what he blamed it on.
Youth for Kentucky has always worked out really, really well.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I don't want to say blamed on, because he did give an interview after he lost. Like, you don't have to give an interview to a national outlet after you lose. He was very respectful, and I loved hearing the rawness, Diesel, if you will, of his interview after they lost, because he kept it real. But if you do point to a cop out, you do have to point to the youth. That's exactly what he gave as his cop out as to why you do see a team like Oakland, older teams, knocking off Kentucky. All right, let's get to the phones. Delvin has been on hold for a few minutes. Delvin, what's going on, man? How are you? We appreciate it, man. Yeah.
No, Delvin. I never once. No, Delvin, no, I never once said that the expectation of the new coach is that he has to go to the Sweet 16. But when are you Clemson fans, you homers, you easily bought rubes, gonna stop letting Brad Brownell have one good year every leap year and say, let's extend him for as long as he wants to be here?
5 o'clock can't get here fast enough.
He is not John Calipari. Brad Brownell has not earned the longevity, the write your own contract, stay as long as you want. I mean, come on, guys. Come on. How pathetic can a Clemson basketball fan be to say, oh, well, every time he's just about to get fired, he does something good, so let's keep him in perpetuity. That is not the way you operate a basketball program.
Coming up, the 5 o'clock debate, today's debate. you'll hear more from Diesel about that. Real quick before break, Dewey, go ahead, man.
and Dewey, come on, give it to me. That's not what I wanted to hear, Dewey. I wanted to hear Shane Beamer forever. I love Dewey, man. I love having that guy on the show. When we come back, the biggest player in baseball is doing a naughty. We talk about the Ohtani scandal next. This thing gets any nastier, there's a chance that the biggest star in baseball could be removed from baseball. Think about that. Think about just how high and how stinky this Shohei Ohtani scandal is getting. I mean, it's getting big. Welcome to the brand new show here on the Fan Upstate Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Listen to us live over the air, over the stream, later on after the fact on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Watch the YouTube video stream, however you want to watch. We appreciate you being here on the show. And of course, we always want to hear from you. All you have to do is call in on the Renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone, 844-326-3663. You can also text us at 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. Cole, you've seen enough bad movies that you know what happens every single time the police arrest multiple suspects and they got to figure out what the truth is. What do? Every single time. They separate them and they try to find out if their story is going to change.
Inconsistencies, right?
They're going to grill them.
They're like a crime show.
They're going to make it hot in the room.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to grill them and see if they can get somebody to crack.
Right.
See if they can get somebody to turn on the other. That's always what they do. And then as soon as their stories differ, bam, gotcha. This story affecting the biggest star in baseball. I mean, maybe it's a little dangerous. Maybe it was a little foolhardy to start calling this guy the greatest baseball player of all time when he's only been in the league for a couple of years. I guess what we do though, right?
Yeah.
We call people the GOATs while they're still active. I hate that. I hate calling anyone the GOAT while they're still playing the game. But if you've been living under a rock and you don't know what's going on, Shohei Ohtani and his interpreter, Mizuhara, and his camp have changed their stories now more times than George Lucas put out updated versions of Star Wars. You know, the ones where you watch it today and there's no dinosaur there, and then you watch it tomorrow and there's a speeder there and there's a dinosaur stopping to take a crap right there in the streets. There's so many changes, so many inconsistencies of the story. The biggest star in the game could potentially find himself out of the game. We'll have to wait and see just how far this is going. But if Shohei Ohtani is embroiled in a multi-million-dollar gambling scandal that's got people comparing him to Pete Rose, and it's gotten his translator fired, it's gotten a lot of transactions exposed, big dollar, big money transactions exposed, and we'll see ultimately what comes out from this. Look, I said this on this station a while back, that if Shohei Ohtani would just learn English, this wouldn't be a problem. If he didn't have an interpreter, if he didn't need an interpreter, he wouldn't have to employ an interpreter, and he would not be paying $4.5 million in gambling debts for an interpreter. So let's see let's go through a little timeline. Those of you who are hearing about this story, the Shohei Ohtani scandal, we'll give you a brief timeline of what's gone on in this thing. So some of this involves some international timing when the team was in Korea playing in the Seoul Classic. But Tuesday, March 19th, 4:30, Rob Manfred learns that, quote, something is happening concerning Shohei Ohtani. 7:30 p.m., his interpreter had a 90-minute phone call with ESPN. And that's not good. That's not good when things start leaking to the press this early, when involved parties start having in-depth interviews with the largest network in sports. Flash forward to the next day, Wednesday, March 20th, 3 o'clock in the morning. This is Pacific time. Again, they're doing this. They are in Korea. They're playing the Padres, Shohei Ohtani, and his interpreter were spotted joking around in the dugout, having themselves a good time. That's going to be important later on in this, so just keep that in mind. People who are in a bad situation, they're not usually joking around like that. 7 a.m. Pacific time. The Dodgers hold a meeting in Seoul, warning players that a negative story is coming. And Shohei Ohtani's interpreter, Mizuhara, reveals that he has a gambling addiction, and that reports from the team, reports from ESPN are coming out. Also, Shohei Ohtani was asking Mizuhara what he had told the team because his interpreter didn't tell him what he had said to the team. This is when it gets really sticky.
Yeah.
Really, really bad. We got a guy who doesn't speak English. We got his English interpreter.
Who's a liar.
Having conversations, number one, with ESPN, number two, with the team, and then not telling his employer, Shohei Ohtani, the biggest star in baseball, what's going on. Also, 7 a.m. Wednesday, Shohei Ohtani, quote, finds out that $4.5 million is missing from his account. I'm not going to bore you with all the rest of this and where this goes, but the story was that he was a victim of theft. A couple days later, a couple hours later, not days, hours, that's how fast this thing developed. The stories were that no. His interpreter, Mizuhara, had a gambling problem, and that Shohei Ohtani was covering his gambling debts for him because he's a nice guy, right? He's such a good guy that he's covering gambling debts for his buddy. His buddy makes $85,000 a year being paid by the Dodgers. He's worth $1 bajillion.
Yeah.
And he's just like, you know what? You're in deep. I got you. 8 different times, $500,000 were transactions were made from Shohei Ohtani to his interpreter to pay off his debts. Then it comes out that the bookie wasn't exactly legal. So we have this situation where Shohei's interpreter gets in deep with the bookie in an illegal bookie. Shohei is giving money to his interpreter to pay off gambling debts to an illegal bookie. You see just how bad this is, right?
Yeah, but the bookie being illegal isn't really even a big deal. So like my thing with this is,
well, it is because it's illegal.
No. It wouldn't have mattered if the bookie was legal or so. Gambling on baseball, my point is, if he was gambling on baseball, it doesn't matter if it was an illegal bookie or a legal bookie or who he was doing it through.
Sure.
The gambling on the sport of baseball is illegal.
So
right?
That's what's important. League Rule 21 states that players and team employees are prohibited from placing wagers, even legal bets, on baseball, and from wagering with illegal or offshore bookmakers.
Yeah, so they can't gamble at all on baseball.
At all.
Regardless of where you place the bet. The problem is, and here's where I think it's all going to come down. The bank statements. You talk about blackmail. The bank statements themselves that paid those $500,000 installments, whose name was on the bank statements?
Shohei Ohtani.
Shohei. And there's no way around it.
Yeah.
When your name is on the bank statement, the other detail that's scary, Diesel, is that the bookie knew the whole time that Ohtani's name was on the statements.
Yep.
Allowed it to continue to go on. As you mentioned, there were several installments of $500,000 at a time. The worst part is the guy was a liar to begin with, right? Like in the bio that was on the team website for the Dodgers, it said he was a former translator for the Yankees. He went to some college, and he was also a former translator for the Red Sox. None of that was true. It was all a lie. Are
we sure Ipe Mizuhara's name is not really George Costanza?
Well, the question is, who is the guy? Like, where did he come from, right? Do we know anything factual to this point? Because, as you said, they're not allowed to bet on baseball. They're not allowed to bet on any level of baseball, college, high school, pro, nothing. They're not allowed to bet on any baseball.
They are allowed to bet on other sports if it's with a legal book.
Correct.
So that's what makes this thing
but you can't
nasty.
tell me he wasn't betting on baseball. I mean, are you really – that's the whole thing.
And do we really think an illegal bookie is going to be keeping detailed records that show exactly what was going on. So here's where it gets interpersonally between Ippei and Shohei, was that Ippei claimed that Shohei never asked if the bookie was legal.
He probably did.
He also claims that they together logged into Shohei's bank account on Shohei's personal laptop and sent the 8 transfers.
Yeah.
So Shohei, maybe it was a don't ask, don't tell situation. I don't want to know. I'm rich, and to me, $4.5 million is really not that much. I mean, like, to anybody, $4.5 million should be. To anybody, I'm still at the point in my life where $20 is a lot of money. If I lose a $20 bill, I'm mad about it.
Well, sadly, $4.5 million to him is not.
That's true. That's true, but it's still a lot of money, regardless of what percentage, what kind of a drop in the bucket it is. I mean, we talked about Dave Tepper and his $300,000 fine, which was the equivalent to like $1.65 to somebody making an average salary in the United States.
Right.
But still, $4.5 million, it gets to the point where feds are going to notice. People are going to notice. If you throw somebody 20 grand, maybe it's like, you've been a good interpreter. Here's a $20,000 bonus. That's not what this was. This is $4.5 million.
You know, what's scary about it is, like, the MLB is in such a tough situation. And whether people like Rob Manfred or not, because there's a lot of people who I know who are baseball guys, and it seems like Diesel, any baseball guy that you talk to, they're not high on Rob Manfred. However, the reality of it is here, like, man, if you just look at it from a non-biased standpoint, the MLB is in a tough situation because, Diesel, there's no way, if you're the commissioner, there's no way you can drop the hammer on this guy. Like, I get it.
You should.
This sport could crumble. It's already bad enough. The worst part of this sport is that we're talking about a guy who's illegal, whose interpreter was caught gambling illegally, and we're not even talking about the games. That's the worst part of this sport, Diesel, that we're not even talking about the actual games that are being played, right?
Yeah.
So you mean to tell me your best player, if you're the commissioner, you're going to drop the hammer on him?
Yeah, that's
no,
why.
You're not.
That's
no,
why
you're not.
That's why I think Shohei is going to skate on this. It really all depends on, number one, whether bets were ever placed on baseball. If anybody can ever prove that money from Shohei's account is sent to pay off debts that were racked up, accrued from bets on baseball, that's a big deal.
So you mean to tell me, and I'll let you get the point too, but $4 million, let's just take the $4 million. You're going to tell me that $4 million worth of bets, and there wasn't a single wager placed on baseball. By the way, the guy you work for plays baseball. No, there's no way.
I mean, consider the fact that, look,
what's he betting on?
Pete Rose has been blackballed from Major League Baseball for what, going on 40 years? Now, he gambled on baseball. We know that Pete Rose gambled on baseball.
Right.
The fun part about Pete Rose and what he did, it's still awful. I still understand why Pete Rose is blackballed from the league. But he was gambling on himself. He was betting the over on what he might do in a game. And he said, you know what? You don't think that I can't get 4 hits in this game? I'm gonna go out and get 5.
But is it really worse though?
No.
Like, at the end of the day, like I said, the man's name is on the bank statement.
Yes.
And if they find out, we're not having the conversation of what should they do or what will they do. I'm just saying, Diesel, if I'm the commissioner, I don't know what he's going to do, but I know what he should do. He should find the nearest rug and the nearest broom, and he should get to work. There's no way you can do this to your best player, man. What does it do to the sport?
What's that statement whenever there's a big scandal or an issue going on at an SEC school? Man, UL Monroe's really going to get it. Yeah. We all know that they're all doing it. The big boys aren't going to be punished, but the little guy's going to get hammered.
For sure.
That, I think, unfortunately, that's what's going to happen here. Rob Manfred would be well within his rights. And when we're talking about justice, Shohei Ohtani, should we find out that baseball was part of the gambling, which I agree with you. I 100% believe that it was. There's no way that this guy racked up $4.5 million in bets and said, you know what? Baseball. That's where I draw the line. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to gamble on baseball. This dude lives in baseball. He knows the absolute most about baseball because he's around it every single day. He knows who's hurt. He knows who's having problems with his girlfriend. He knows all of this stuff. So you're telling me that guy never once gambled on baseball. I'm going to call you a liar.
So Madcraft brought up an interesting point on the stream. He says, Cole, if you do nothing, what messages are you sending to the rest of the players, right? Like, I get it, Madcraft. I'm not agreeing that it's not dirty. I'm just saying from a baseball standpoint, Jeff Passan said it best yesterday, I believe, when he was on an interview. Jeff Passan, Diesel, said when the credibility of the game is in question, everything around that crumbles. Again, when the credibility of the game is in question, everything else around it crumbles. Baseball is not a sport. I mean, what two words or what one word did we used to pair with baseball all the time? It's just so pure, you know?
I was going to say boring.
Well, you can say that too, but I'm just saying, what do all the old head baseball guys say? You know, you go out to the field, and it's the smell of the fresh cut grass, and it's just so pure. It's just so pure. The game is so pure. How many times have you heard the game of baseball is the last pure sport? America's what? America's pastime. However, the best player in the world, and you said it, Diesel, arguably one of the greatest to ever play the game, the talent that he brings to the field is something we've never seen with a player being able to pitch and hit the way that Ohtani does.
Yeah, so if you want to make the purity argument, something has to come down. A hammer has to be dropped. However, you and I both know that ratings for baseball series 4.7. Compare that to the largest ratings Major League Baseball ever had. I'm seeing them in the 32 range during the 78 and 1980 World Series. So the biggest the game has ever been, most recently, was 1980. Ever since then, ratings have dropped and dropped and dropped and dropped all the way down to a 4.7.
Yeah.
So Major League Baseball needs every single ounce of star power it can get out of guys like Shohei Ohtani. So what we're going to find out here right now, as this story continues to play out, just how much integrity does Major League Baseball actually have? That is the question that's going to be answered. How much integrity does baseball have? Are they willing to brush this under the rug for the health of the game and the popularity of the game, while they're at the same time talking about the purity of the game? That's where we're going to end up.
I'll be honest, man. I see both sides. I really do.
You fence riding.
I'll be honest with you. Like, I don't think, Diesel, if we're being quite honest, I don't think there's a good scenario that happens. You know, I just can't think of a good way out of this. Like, it's bad. It's bad for Ohtani. I don't know that it's bad for his translator. What are they going to do to him? Fire? I mean, you know, he's still fine. You know, he can still translate. It's bad for the sport of baseball, and it's bad for Ohtani. So that is where I'm at with it. I think you know, as we've talked about it every single day, as you were talking about on your timeline, new things have evolved.
Hour by hour.
Hour by hour. I don't know that we're done yet.
No, something else is coming out.
Hopefully we don't find out that baseball was on the parlay. Hopefully we find out that baseball wasn't a wager. Speaking of wager, coming up next, if you would have bet your paycheck that Clemson basketball would have been in the, is that right? Sweet 16, Diesel? South Carolina basketball, where are they? We will tell you the current state of both programs, where they are, where they're headed, Diesel's opinion, my opinion. I'm Cole Bryson. This is Wire to Wire, South Carolina basketball, Clemson basketball. Up next on the Fan Upstate. Appreciate it.
Okay. That was the issue. I couldn't see from here that those mics were not in utility. And so like when we were running it the other way, they could hear us just fine, but then they couldn't hear callers. Because essentially the studio audio was muted. The board audio was muted. So hopefully we should be good from here forward. There's a million and one things to troubleshoot, and that was the most obvious one. So thank you for that. See ya.
So we figured it out?
Yeah, we're back. It's Wire to Wire, a brand new show on the Fan Upstate. Diesel and Cole Bryson working on some of these little technical difficulties that happen on the very first day of a show.
First date, kind of nervous, Diesel.
Yeah, let us know on the stream if we sound good now.
Look at there. We've already got one.
Sounding good. Madcraft, JD, James, Todd Duncan. Man, this is huge. The number of people we have in this stream on our very first day.
You know, I hadn't seen that number on that screen before.
Triple digits, baby.
I filled in probably Diesel. I don't know, a dozen times with you.
Never happened before.
Never happened with that number.
Never happened before.
That is a new number. A new number of digits. Hitting the old triple, are we?
Yep. Super disappointed in the SEC and its performance through the first two rounds of the NCAA tournament. I mean, for a league that hailed 8 teams making the tournament and only 3 make it out of the first round.
Ooh.
That is damning when it comes to the supposed ascension of SEC basketball. We've heard that for a long time, that ACC basketball is on its decline and that SEC basketball is on the rise.
Yeah.
So what do? They put a lot of SEC teams in the tournament, and most of them crap the bed. Round 1, Kentucky loses to Oakland. And people are setting sofas on fire all over the state of Kentucky. Kentucky lost to 11 seed Oregon, and you let a former player, a former Gamecock, put up a 40 spot on you. That's bad. Mississippi State loses to Michigan State, but Tom Izzo's teams are always good in the tournament. I'm not really hating on Mississippi State for that one. Auburn, my pick for the national champions, lose to Yale. Screwed my bracket all to hail.
I like that. A good rhyme there.
Florida loses to Colorado. Sorry, Mark Ryan. Tennessee, Texas A&M, and Alabama, the only 3 SEC teams to make it out of the first round. Tennessee then got past Texas 62-58. Dalton Connect had 18 in that game, but it wasn't really a stellar performance in round 2 there from the Vols, winning that game 62-58. They are a high-flying, high-scoring offense and only put up 62 on Texas. Not exactly the Tennessee we were all hoping, but again, it's survive and advance this time of the year. I'm not hating on Texas A&M for taking a loss to Houston in overtime. That was one hell of a game last night.
Great game.
Anderson Garcia, that miracle heave to send it to overtime. You know, my wife and I were watching this game. We're about to go to bed, and she's like, "This thing better not go to overtime." And she says that with about 30 seconds to play in the game. And I'm like, "Honey, you realize what you just
jinxed
did. You jinxed it, or you spoke it into existence." And boom, Texas A&M sends this thing to overtime. Now, Houston obviously overpowered him overtime and ended up winning that game. And Alabama has advanced as well. They had a little bit of an easier path.
You know, they have.
They really have.
A&M, Diesel, just to park on that note for a second, to park right there, A&M, you talk about the lack of success for the SEC teams. They've got to – I'm just looking at the rest of the teams left. I mean,
A&M to me has easily been the team that's looked the best out of the SEC. I mean, that's a big time win against Nebraska, right? And then you take Houston, and man, they have to score 100 points to beat you.
Yeah.
A&M's look like, I don't know that many people would have projected this, but A&M so far in the tournament has looked like the best SEC team that we've seen.
Yeah, and you look at Alabama's draw. I mean, they got 13 seed Charleston.
Yeah.
And then 12 seed Grand Canyon.
Right.
But here's where it gets real. Now they got to take on the 1 seed North Carolina. Who's been a little up and down. I mean, RJ Davis in the ACC tournament didn't look particularly great. But Alabama, this is where it gets real for the Crimson Tide.
And talk about Tennessee's path.
Yeah.
They had St. Peter's, who they beat by like 40. Yep. I mean, 83-49.
Yep.
And then they had Texas, and I thought that was an intriguing game, kind of low scoring.
But
62.
It should have been
right. It shouldn't have. So now they get Creighton with a huge win over Oregon. So to your point, the SEC has underperformed. And I guess, like, Diesel, when we talk about playoffs and different sports, we always say, like, we want parity. We want there to be parity among the teams who win the championship, right? And we want that in college football. We don't want the same blue bloods. We don't want the Alabamas versus Clemson every year. When I look at the 16 left, I don't know that we've ever seen as much parity. Diesel, no Kentucky, right? No Auburn. Yeah, Duke's still there. Duke, Houston. Duke may not be there much longer. But you've got teams like Illinois and Iowa State. And you can't really call Alabama, Clemson. Those aren't blue bloods. Arizona, I mean, obviously they're always really good. But the parity in this Sweet 16, I think, is very intriguing. You know, this is a conversation that a lot of people have when this time of year comes around, because a lot of people do like seeing the blue bloods, right? They do like seeing the Kentuckys in the Final Four. They do like seeing those perennial powerhouses. But at the same time, why is March Madness, Diesel, the spectacle that it is? Because it's the same reason people watch a race. They want to see a wreck. They want to see a crash, right?
I've made a big argument, and I made that argument in today's Wire2Wire sports spin that you may have heard across a number of our radio stations, that I think fewer and fewer of these power teams should be getting in, that more and more of these small elite mid-majors should be getting in. But we do that, and we eliminate part of what we all love about the NCAA tournament is teams who are overseeded, teams who are pumped up in the public's mind and in Vegas's mind, getting beat by elite mid-majors. And you take some of those high majors. You know, I'm talking about the teams that were 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th best in a conference getting in. You take those teams out of the NCAA tournament, we don't get to see the big upsets like we used to. So it's a double-edged sword. I wish the better teams got in, not so much the big brands, but we also get to see the big brands take it on the chin, and that's part of what we really love about March Madness and about the NCAA tournament. But bringing it back here to the to something that we didn't get a chance to talk about because our show didn't exist until today. The show is Wire2Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson here on the Fan Upstate, coming to you live from the Ingalls Markets studio. We didn't get to talk about the 6th seed South Carolina Gamecocks taking it on the chin to the Oregon Ducks. You know, Jermaine Couisnard, a guy who is a former South Carolina Gamecock, puts up 40 points on his previous team. South Carolina was never really that into that game. Halftime score was a 5-point differential. And then Oregon ends up just pulling away late. They won the second half by 9, 87-73 was the final score of that game. But that's not something you want to see out of a Lamont Paris team right after Lamont just got his bag. He got his extension. He got a big old pay raise. South Carolina defensively in that game was not good. They were not good, and Oregon was just lights out in that game. So chalk that game up to whatever you want. Oregon, I mean, when a team shoots just a shade under 60% from the field in a game, they are going to win that game more often than not.
So you and I talked about this on Friday morning with Rob, right? On when you and I jumped on with Rob Brown. when you look at the totality of it, right, it was an excellent season for South Carolina.
Sure was.
However, when you do get into a tournament style playoff, Diesel, where you have so many different teams, right? 60 plus teams, and you've got 60 plus coaches, 60 plus rosters, you're going to have such a plethora of styles. And when you have that many teams, you're going to have intriguing matchups in ways that this team has to play against this team. In no way am I making an excuse for South Carolina. However, I will say this, watching that game on, what was it, Thursday night? Is that right? Thursday night,
right,
when South Carolina dropped to Oregon. Diesel, it sometimes when you're watching a basketball game or a football game or whatever it may be, sometimes the worst loss, the worst way to lose, if you will, is if you feel like you're the better team, right? If you feel like you're the better team and you just don't play well and you lose the game, whether it's college football, whatever it is, that's something that just doesn't sit well with you. When I watch that game, and I'd love to hear from our audience and what they think as well, because when I watch that game, Diesel, on Thursday night, at no point did I ever think South Carolina's the better team.
No.
I never even thought that the Oregon Ducks allowed South Carolina to breathe. They jumped on them early, and they really dominated Wire2Wire. I mean, they really did. And the way that
it's good branding.
It was good branding. And the way that Oregon jumped out early, I never felt like South Carolina legitimately had a chance to pull back and make that game close. So, like, again, do I sound like the guy who's trying to defend South Carolina? Maybe so, but I will say this. I think you got beat by a better team in Oregon. Oregon, they're a unique style. We saw them in the second round. They almost punched their ticket to the Sweet 16, Diesel. I will say it's disappointing, but I don't think we're to the point where you're really putting a ton of weight into the loss for the Gamecocks, because, like, when you do have a season that was as successful as it was when you were picked to finish dead last, I think sometimes your ultimate goal as a coach and player is obviously to win and win every game. But sometimes, like, you can sleep easier at night knowing we weren't picked to even finish in the top 10. We were picked to finish last, Diesel. And, yeah, you know what? We ran into a really hot team in Oregon. We didn't really feel like we were ever in the game, but we had a great season. We feel like we have our coach, right? You've got your coach. You've got your guy. There's no doubt about that. I'm not giving them an excuse for losing. I do think, though, all I'm saying is that South Carolina fans should be able to sleep at night knowing that they had a much better season than anticipated.
South Carolina wasn't able to do defensively what they wanted to do to the Oregon Ducks. I mean, they averaged giving up 73 points a game. Oregon scored 87.
Mm-hmm.
If South Carolina does what South Carolina did all season long, that's a tie ball game.
Right.
We're sending that game into overtime. Again, I said that Oregon shot just about 60% from the field. And when you have a guy who's on, like Jermaine Cousinard was on Thursday, you're ultimately not going to win a whole lot of basketball games.
Yeah.
And you're right. South Carolina was not a team this year that was designed and built to be able to score an awful lot of points and to make runs to come back. They need to stop you and just outlast you by 3 or 4 points. And that's the team South Carolina's been all season long. And that one just got away from them.
Kind of felt like them trying to do the same thing against Auburn. Both times they played Auburn, Diesel. Kind of the same story. South Carolina's defense was really good all season. Unfortunately, when they ran up against Auburn, for whatever reason, they could not stop the Tigers. Very similar with the Ducks. All right, speaking of South Carolina, coming up next, I watched yesterday an absolute beatdown, Diesel. An absolute beatdown with South Carolina and North Carolina. South Carolina right now, the Lady Gamecocks look like the best team in the country, the world, however you want to spin it. South Carolina looks unbeatable. However, there is one team that I, Cole Bryson, thinks can beat South Carolina. There is one team that can beat South Carolina this postseason. Find out next on Wire2Wire.
to stream the entire show or up to 5 o'clock?
That's a good question, Diesel.
Hey guys on the stream, I'm just making sure we're blocked. Can you guys on the stream hear us? Can you guys on the stream hear us? They shouldn't.
Steven, JD, can you hear us?
I don't think they can.
Can you hear us, baby?
They shouldn't be able to.
If they can now, they wish they wouldn't have. Can you hear us?
Hell yeah.
They can hear us.
Oh, they can hear us.
Good, baby. Let's go. Is that good or bad? Actually, it's not a good thing that y'all can hear us.
We're muted. They shouldn't be able to hear us. It's exciting. What an exciting time to be alive.
Well, they can. Sorry, guys. Sorry if we said anything bad. An overwhelming yes.
And all collections and new. But you must call.
So you're leading in here?
Yeah.
Lady Gamecocks. Yeah.
If you're man enough.
844 fan phone. This is Wire2Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson.
It is Wire to Wire. I'm Cole Bryson. He's Diesel. As you can see, if you're joining us on the stream, Diesel is showing off his moves on this Monday. He's ready. He's excited for what's to come on the program. Glad you could be a part of it. As I teased coming into the last segment, or coming into the last break, Diesel. You know, sometimes you watch a game and it gets out of hand. You cut it off. You go outside. You change the channel. You do something new, right? Well, yesterday, for whatever reason, I watched the entire South Carolina, North Carolina basketball game.
Well, the reason is
it is, and we have a radio show, right? So that's another reason. Diesel, I think that South Carolina and Dawn Staley are as good as they get. I don't think, and I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I watch a ton of women's basketball, and I'm a women's basketball expert at the collegiate level. I'm not going to tell you that. But what I will tell you is, from the basketball that I've watched, I do think there's one team that can beat South Carolina. That one team is South Carolina. I don't think there's a team in the field, Diesel, that can consistently go 4 quarters with Dawn Staley's lineup, with Dawn Staley's depth, and against Dawn Staley's coaching. However, we do know that in sports, you have a bad night, right?
Always.
And it's possible that South Carolina has a bad night. Many thought that maybe South Carolina would have a bad day yesterday. The first time they played North Carolina, it was 65-58. Pretty close matchup. Tar Heels were, in that game all the way till the final buzzer. So my point being, South Carolina, Diesel, unless they just come out one day or one night and just lay an egg, beat themselves, turn the basketball over with the depth that they have, I don't see Caitlin Clark beating the Gamecocks. I don't see Kim Mulkey beating the Gamecocks. Looking at the rest of the field, Diesel, I don't know that we've ever seen a dominant team that has a brand new 5 starting on their starting lineup. Last year's 5, this year's 5. Not a single person from last year's 5 is on this year's 5. I don't know we've ever seen a team that dominant with a new lineup. So South Carolina, the only team, in my opinion, that can beat them is South Carolina. Diesel, tell me I'm wrong. Try to convince me that there's a team out there that can take down the South Carolina team.
Well, an incredible stat is now that
107 days since South Carolina women's basketball last lost at Colonial Life Arena.
Ooh.
Since the Asia Wilson statue went up, the South Carolina Gamecocks have not lost a game on their home court. That is classic era Tennessee level of dominance.
It really is.
recent era of UConn level dominance. I mean, what Dawn Staley has done there, it is an absolute machine. Literally plug and play. She can get the best of the best recruits. Now, there are other programs out there that are pretty good, but they're not even close. They're not even close to being in the realm of South Carolina. Now, you look at who they may play, they'll get the winner of the 4-5 matchup between Oklahoma and Indiana. Indiana might pose a little bit of a threat, but I mean, they put up almost 90 against Fairfield in the first round of that tournament, but that's not really equivalent level competition to talk about. Oklahoma, Indiana, the winner, probably not going to keep it within 15 to 20 points of South Carolina.
No.
You know, you look at who else they might face. Notre Dame.
And they're good. Notre Dame's really good.
Probably not good enough to beat or even play with South Carolina. On the other side of the bracket, obviously we've got Caitlin Clark in Iowa on that side of the bracket. And in you've got LSU coming up. LSU's probably been the only team that has played them close multiple times this season. It was 7 points back in January.
Yep.
It was 6-7 points in the SEC women's tournament. So I think LSU might.
Yeah, that's the only one.
I don't think Iowa has anything for South Carolina this year. I think LSU, Kim Mulkey, they say it's hard to beat a team twice in a season. Well, it's real hard to beat a team 3 times in a season.
It is.
I see this coming down to the wire being another tight game. So if the national championship on the women's side ends up South Carolina LSU,
there's a good chance.
We've got a sub 10-point game there, and that will be the best storyline we could possibly have.
For sure.
On that side,
for
getting
sure.
Those two to match up again, especially after the fight that we saw in Greenville. I still want to know what the LSU player's brother jumping in from the third row thought he was going to accomplish in that fight. I still want to know what he thought he was going to do. Never going to go well for you, sir, when you enter the playing court from the third row. And we even had somebody text in, well, what do you want him to do? It's his sister. I want him to keep his ass in the stands. In what world are fans justifying fans coming over the barrier, over the scorer's table, and entering the court because it's his sister? She's a grown-ass woman.
Yeah.
She got into this fight. It's up to her to figure this out.
Speaking of LSU from the 380, the Bayou Barbie is a punk. Her actions last year were sickening, but she had to wave bye to an inferior opponent. Who are you curb stomping in your? I have to get the rest of that text, but the Bayou Barbie, that's a good one. That's one I haven't seen yet. I like that.
That is good.
That is a good one for Kim. So I said that South Carolina is the only team that can beat South Carolina. I do stand by that. But Diesel, to your point, LSU, they seem like the only team that can play South Carolina close, right?
Only team that can play with them.
Only team that can play with them. And, somebody pointed out on the stream, you said it, it is hard to beat a team 3 times. And when you do have talented players like Angel Reese, lover or hater, she is very talented. When you do have players like Angel Reese and you do have coaches like Kim Mulkey, they're going to give you a game. And they can play with South Carolina. They've shown that. Angel Reese, in her post-game interview, I don't know if you remember or not, just a few weeks ago after the fight, she looked dead at the camera and said, we're not scared of South Carolina. And, when you beat them, I get it. However, you haven't beaten them. Yeah. So it probably helped to beat them before you say that. I don't think we'll see any other matchup other than South Carolina LSU for the Natty. However, Diesel, let's think about this. If those two teams were to play, South Carolina LSU for the national championship, Don Staley versus Kim Mulkey, what I said about South Carolina beating South Carolina, that's going to happen when you play a good team. South Carolina's not going to beat South Carolina when they're playing Oklahoma, right?
Right.
They're not going to beat Presbyterian. That wasn't even a game. So when you play a good team, when the pressure's on, when it's a really tough atmosphere, a tough environment, that's when I could see South Carolina turning the ball over and maybe playing a little bit too tight. However, if it's a national title and it's South Carolina LSU, and I have to take one of those teams and I have to put money on one of those teams, it's going to be hard for me to go against Don Staley. There's no doubt.
Certainly. Yeah, I would absolutely go South because they've shown themselves to not be a team that beats themselves.
Yeah.
It would be LSU doing just enough to throw South Carolina off their game and then winning because of that. That's the only way. I mean, I don't always subscribe to the idea of, well, we just had bad luck. Well, we just didn't show up today. What does that mean? It's not like there's this groupthink issue that the entire team gets the yips and suddenly can't hit 3-pointers in a game. It's because the other team did it to you.
For sure.
What that does is it doesn't give credit to the team that just beat you.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's go to the phones. JD wants to talk a little March Madness. What's up, man?
JD in Simpsonville.
JD in Simpsonville. Go ahead, buddy.
Oh, hey, you got me here?
I got you now.
Oh, yep. Hey, thanks for taking my call, guys. Appreciate it. Man, I don't know. My hair is standing up on my arms, dude. I don't know if there's like more electricity in the air today or if it's this wire-to-wire deal or what, but man, y'all got it going on over here. I wanted to chime in, though, on a couple of things real quick. First of all, Mongo beat me to being the first caller.
No. Mongo wasn't.
I'm not high enough on the food chain at work to where I can take time off. Mongo, he's probably sitting behind the desk in a computer, so he got to beat me there. If you're not first, you're last. So I'm last, but I'm number one in your heart still, guys. So March Madness, I think that Oregon was severely underseeded. I want to eliminate a few conference games in the middle of the season, and I want some of these teams to play like a single elimination tournament just to kind of help the committee, because they never play in this scenario until they're in March. Well, they play it in the conference tournament, but at that point, everybody's kind of already locked in. They're already kind of, seeded where they're going to be. I mean, you have those teams, obviously, that sneak in, like North Carolina State, but that's kind of to my point. Like if North Carolina State, the men's, had they played a single game elimination tournament in the middle of the season, the committee would have known that, oh, this is a very good tournament team. They might not be very good in the regular season, but this might be someone we want to look to add into the tournament.
Well, JD, let me ask you this question. Do you consider yourself a big NBA fan? I know that a lot of people around here don't love the NBA. Are you an NBA fan? Because the mid-season tournament is something that's made its way into the NBA over the past couple of seasons, and I'm wondering if that's influencing your interest in a mid-season tournament.
Well, not a big NBA fan. I've always been a LeBron fan. Look at, don't hate me. I just came out of high school around the same time as him, so he was on ESPN. So I've kind of followed him. So I'm not huge in the NBA, but that is kind of where I got the idea. But I also got to thinking about it. There's so many teams that once they get into the tournament, they're not who we thought they were. I mean, South Carolina, all the SEC teams, for example, all of those guys, I mean, what were they, 0-6 or 1-5 or whatever to start out? So I just think if maybe you eliminated, 4 conference games, still do your non-conference, and then, play like 6 to 8 conference games and then take a break from them and just do like a little in-season tournament, not necessarily for any guarantees to make it into the NCAA tournament, but just to help show the committee what these teams will play like in a single elimination setting. Because tournament ball and regular season ball, as we all know, is completely different things. And I knew that for playing Little League baseball and things like that. So that's just kind of where I've gotten the idea. I don't know. I'm still torn on it. Like I said, I just want to give the committee more information though to make a better decision when it comes to seeding. because I'll say this, I might catch some flack for it. If Clemson had to play Oregon and South Carolina had to play New Mexico, Clemson might as well have been, they could have gotten eliminated just as easily as South Carolina did, and South Carolina might have beaten New Mexico. So that's just kind of where I got the thought from. Take it or leave it for what it is.
Thanks, JD. We appreciate the phone call there. Yeah, I mean, the seeding is what the seeding is. You can't always blame it on the draw. You have to show up and you have to play in these games. I mean, if you don't show up, you lose. You go home. And, I mean, is the NCAA tournament the best way to crown a national champion? It's certainly the most exciting way. It's certainly the most chaotic way. But we talk about it every year when it comes to conference tournaments. We are asking these teams to play in a format multiple days in a row, survive in advance, which they haven't played in all season long. I mean, a lot of these teams do end up in early season, invitational tournaments. There are ways, for example, I know the MAC and the Sun Belt have a challenge where they're, number 1 and number 2 teams in the net play each other. 1-1 plays each other, 2-2 plays each other, but that's a one-off game. That is not a mid-season tournament. I do see, JD, the value in looking at how these teams might perform in a tournament setting later on in the season. I don't know that you're going to get a whole lot of people wanting to eliminate conference games for that reason. It's intriguing. So I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but I'm not sure that major conferences really need that.
Real quick before you throw it to break, Diesel, a little bit of South Carolina news. Joe Tipton from On3 Sports is reporting that South Carolina's leading scorer, Michie Johnson, has entered the transfer portal.
Oh, pull the knife out of the back, Gamecock fans. When we come back, we've teased this all day long. I think Brad Brownell still has not done enough to earn his future at Clemson. Cole's on the other side of this. We'll talk about it next here on Wire to Wire, brand new show on the Fan Upstate.
It is Wire to Wire. I'm Cole Bryson. He's Diesel. It is time for the 5 o'clock fight, as Diesel called it. I love that, Diesel.
Yeah.
The
like
5 o'clock fight.
I'm going to give it to you. That's a gift.
Free of charge?
Free of charge. You can use it
Really?
anytime you want.
I like the 5 o'clock fight. So something that Diesel and I have talked about with this new show, Wire to Wire, a debate that the audience can weigh in on a daily basis at 5 o'clock, the 5 o'clock fight with myself and Diesel. Every day it's going to be a different topic. It may not be sports related tomorrow. You never know. Diesel and I, we like to have good food debates as well. We've had some pretty good ones on the air before, but Diesel, you created this debate without even creating the debate. So we didn't have to put much prep into this one. You are just adamant that Brad Brownell, regardless of a Sweet 16 appearance, is still
has not done enough.
Still has. I cannot repeat those words. Let me try one more time. Still has not done enough. Sweet 16? Does it get any sweeter than that? Then maybe the Elite 8. I'll let you go first, and I want our audience to know that they can chime in. 71307, start your message with fan. Diesel, Brad Brownell is in the Sweet 16. What must he do?
I am not taking a single thing away from the performance that they have had through the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament or over the course of this season. This has been a great season for Clemson. There's been a lot of ups and downs. There has been ugly losses. We saw it, the loss against Boston College in the first round of the ACC tournament. We saw it at the tail end of the season where they had lost, I think, 6 out of their final 10.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that this has not been a great season for Clemson. What I am saying is that Clemson fans need to not be bought so easily by every time Brad Brownell's job is on the line, he does just enough not to get fired. Okay, so here's some numbers for you. 14 tournament appearances in the modern era in college basketball for Clemson. 14. They've had 5 Sweet 16 appearances since 1980. Now 2 of them are Brad Brownell's. Credit for making 2.
Mm-hmm.
But Clemson fans have gotten into our text line inbox, 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. They have called us on the renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone line, 844-326-3663. They have expressed a large amount of frustration with Brad Brownell.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because his overall body of work has been subpar. He's only made the NCAA tournament 4 times in 13 seasons. He's made the NIT 4 times. He's only made it out of the first and second round of any of these tournaments once. He stinks in postseason play. Compare that to a guy, and I know that I am putting this out there and I am throwing a big name at you, but compare Brad Brownell's body of work to a guy who has been one of, if not the GOAT of college basketball over the last 30 seasons, a guy like Tom Izzo at Michigan State. He's been labeled Tournament Tom,
Okay, you want to talk about Brownell?
a guy whose teams have a 56-23 record in the NCAA tournament. 1 title, 8 Final Fours. He's been there 30 years. Tom Izzo is a great, but Tom Izzo has more Final Fours than Brad Brownell is pacing to have NCAA tournament appearances. That should get your attention, Clemson fans.
Wow.
That's bad syntax. Are 3 wins really enough to make you forget about all your frustrations that you've had with Brad Brownell over the past 13 seasons? 3 wins. I'm talking beating UNC on the road for the first time ever and a Sweet 16 berth. 2 wins to get to this point. Is that really extension worthy? I'm also going to tell you that almost all of his talent is going bye-bye after this season. Chase Hunter is a senior. Joe Girard is a graduate student. PJ Hall is a senior. Ian Shefflin's a junior. You'll get him back. But you're
but that shouldn't dictate whether he keeps his job.
My point is your cupboard is going to be awfully bare. Awfully bare.
So bring in a new coach with a bared cupboard is what you're saying?
I'm saying you have to invest in the future. You guys keep thinking about the past. You guys keep thinking, how can we protect this tiny little pile of gold that we have right here? I'm saying your pile of gold will never get any bigger if you flat out refuse to do anything about it. And maybe that's good enough for you. If I'm a Clemson fan, that's not good enough for me. You've won national championships in football. You've got a top 5 team, number 3 in the country in baseball this year. You're winning national championships in golf. You're winning national championships in soccer. Is making the tournament 4 out of 13 years really good enough for you? And tell me this. If you change nothing, does that improve?
So
no.
I hear you.
Yep.
However, I will give credit to where credit's due in Delvin. I actually do think that he has a valid point. What I'll say, Diesel, is, and he touched on it, but let's say he loses, right? So he loses against Arizona. So Brad Brownell this season had a great year. He got the Sweet 16 and he lost to Arizona. You bring in a new coach. The coach asks you, Graham Neff, okay, well, your last coach just made it to the Sweet 16. What do you expect out of me? What would your answer be? More consistency? Because if that's what your answer is, I'm fine with that. However, if you were going to do it, you should have done it last year, not this year. Because you can't do it after. You got
embarrassed by Morehead State in the first round of the NIT last year on your home court.
Right. You can't do it. My point is you can't do it after the man just took you to you should have done it last year. That's when I believe you should have done it.
I don't have my keys in here, Cole, but I would dangle them in your face.
Okay.
I would shake the shiny keys, they jingle jangle in front of your face. Follow the bouncing ball. Okay. What I'm telling you, and this is the point that Delvin made, was, are you really going to tell your next head coach that making the Sweet 16 is not good enough?
Right.
I'm not telling the next head coach that. What I am telling the next head coach is making it to this point only twice in a 13-year career, only making the tournament 4 times in a 13-year career. This guy has been around Clemson's program for a long time. His fingerprint is all over everything. And what is the hallmark of Clemson basketball? Inconsistency. Up and down, getting beaten in embarrassing fashion in the NIT, getting bounced from the NCAA tournament in the first round. This year is an abnormality. That's what I'm telling you, that this year is an abnormality from Clemson. And good on Brad Brownell for having this season when he absolutely has to have it. To me, Brad Brownell is coaching for his life.
Yeah.
He's coaching for his
I don't disagree
life.
with that.
And I'm not distracted by the pretty thing that walks by here, okay? I'm looking at the totality of his body of work, and I'm saying that you will never get better than this unless you chase being better than that. If you say we're going to bring back Brad Brownell, his contract runs through 2026. If you say, okay, we're going to go ahead and extend you, we're going to let you stay here until 2030. I'm going to tell you, well, guess what? You're going to miss the NCAA tournament 4 out of those 6 years. You might make it once again and get bounced. But if you fancy yourself as a program that should be getting to this point year in and year out, Brad Brownell is not the guy that's going to get you there year in and year out. He is never going to be the kind of guy that gets you year in and year out. You look back at their recruiting rankings, 2024, been a banner year for the Tigers, 22nd in the country in recruiting. But you look back the year before that, mid-70s. You look back the year before that, mid-50s.
Yeah.
Before that, mid-70s. So he's having the elite season that he has to have at exactly the right time.
Which is why you should have done it last year.
And it may parlay him into a fantastic extension.
Yeah.
And a big old chunk of change coming from Clemson University over the next couple of years. All I'm saying is, and you are right, if you were going to do it, you should have done it last year. Clemson, the administration showed themselves to not have the guts to do it last year when it absolutely should have happened. They gave him the one more year wait and see extension, and he took full advantage of that. And you're probably going to extend him, even though I don't think you should.
All right, it's time to get your thoughts in. The conversation continues. We're going to the phones. You can also get your thoughts in on the stream as well as the text line. Text 71307. Start your message with the word fan. Let's see what Tyler has to say. Ironic that Tyler's calling in about a Clemson take. Tyler, go ahead.
Hey, appreciate you having me on. Congratulations on the new show. Looking forward to you carrying the torch.
Appreciate you, man. And by the way, just wanted to get that out there. You weren't the Tyler. Just wanted to preface that with making sure that you weren't going to call in and fuss at us, Tyler.
No worries. Hey, so I'm a lifelong Clemson.
Hey, Tyler, do us a favor. Tyler, do us a favor. We got a real bad audio connection on you. You're dropping out quite a bit. Do us a favor. We're going to drop this call. We want you to call right back, okay? We want you to call right back.
Yeah, try to get that better.
We'll get you back in, see if we can improve that audio connection.
He must be out in the boonies.
So you're on the opposite side. You say he's done enough.
Yeah, I just think he has this year. I mean, like, it's a year-to-year game. It's a year-to-year league. And I hope we can get Tyler back on because I do want to hear your thoughts, Diesel. But, at the end of the day, like, your job is to perform, and your job's to win the games that matter. And has Brad Brownell been consistent? No. And we do have some audio we'll get to in a second as well. But my thoughts are, Diesel, he took you to the Sweet 16 this season, and did they fall off a little bit toward the end? Maybe so. However, I don't know what kind of expectations people have for Clemson basketball. Let's remember, we talk about this all the time as Clemson not being a basketball school. Well, if we're going to say they're not a basketball school, but at the same time say, well, they should go out and try to get the next big – but they're not a basketball school, you said, right? So, like, if they're not a basketball school, why isn't Brad Brownell enough?
You don't have to be just a one-sport school. You can be a two-sport school, believe it or not. It is allowed to be you're allowed to be a two-sport school.
Yeah, but that's easier said than done.
It is, but you have to show that you want to be elite at multiple sports. It's tough. I remember it was at the mid-2000s. Florida was winning national championships in football and basketball at the same time. And what I'm telling you is Clemson could be there if you wanted to be there. I know that he's got his issues, but Will Wade is out there. Will Wade is at McNeese State. You're telling me that Clemson couldn't throw some money at Will Wade and get him out of Louisiana?
Well, there's in-state coaches too that wouldn't be bad.
That's very
candidates.
True. I've argued. Now we love Furman basketball. We love our connection with them, but I've argued very heavily that Bob Ritchie should be a candidate at Clemson. He is a better basketball coach than Brad Brownell is. Brownell is a good recruiter when he needs to be.
Yeah.
But he is not the best X's and O's coach down the line. I do want to get to our caller here. We said we were going to get him on. Let's get Tyler back into the show. Tyler, go ahead with your call.
Yep. Can you guys hear me this time?
Got you perfectly loud and clear.
Yeah. So I always equate this with my buddies. It feels like we're in a Tommy Bowden football like era of mediocrity, and we go 8-6, 9-5, or whatever, and we were dissatisfied with the status quo, and I feel like that's what we've done with Clemson basketball, right? I mean, we've proven that we're willing to make capital investments in the facilities. We've had decent recruiting. I don't understand how it's just frustrating when season after season, we know that the deepest run we're going to get is, either make it to the tournament and get bounced. This is an anomaly this year.
Is that right, computer?
And unfortunately, he makes it to the tournament. They extend him 3 years. Those 3 years are horrible. He then has an off an off good season, and then we extend him another 3. At some point, I feel like, to spark the program, you got to make a change. And I agree, Sweet 16, it could be hard with some folks to justify it, but at some point you just got to pull the trigger.
Well, Tyler,
at this point,
Tyler Cole said it earlier. He said Clemson fans don't really know what their expectations are. And if you release Brad Brownell after making a Sweet 16, and again, he may win this game, move on to the Elite Eight, and that makes it a tougher and tougher conversation in my mind. People will always want to point back and say, well, on this date, you said this. Well, that was on that date.
Yeah.
Things have changed. Circumstances have changed. And my question is, do Clemson fans want to be better than this at basketball? The inconsistency, the getting bounced in the NIT round 1, the getting bounced in the NCAA tournament round 1, the not making the NCAA tournament. I say that's not good enough for Clemson. And if you ever want to be better than that, you have to do the scary thing. You have to, jump into the ice cold river.
No, 100% agree. 100% agree. I mean, the one thing that's so frustrating under Brownell is just the lack of consistency, right? When Dabo came in, took him a year or 2, but then he, the best is the standard. That, it sounds cliche, that's his quote, and we've fallen off that recently. But we've come to expect that standard from the Clemson football program, and I don't see why, with the investments we're willing to make, the support from the administration, an athletic director who's willing to, support the staff, us being in a geographic location where we can legitimately go out there and land some solid recruits. We landed a couple of solid transfers in PJ Hall and Gerard. I don't see why, under a different regime, under a different coach, that we can't get to the standard where we're expecting to get to the Sweet 16 year in, year out. And when we don't, it's like the football program, we're up in arms. So I'll sign off and listen. But again, congrats, gents. And we're looking forward to
Thanks,
you guys
Tyler.
carrying the torch.
Appreciate you, man. Real quick before we hit a break, 30 seconds. Real intriguing what Joe Girard and PJ Hall had to say last night.
Yeah, man, I don't really like usually doing this, but all those Fire Brownell guys can, kiss it. So, he's done an unbelievable job here. He's built this program for 14 years. He's been in the league for so long. Like, you don't get that every day. You don't get that everywhere. So, Brownell's an unbelievable coach. Obviously has a lot of strategies, a lot of techniques that he likes to do. That's why it's so successful. So, shout out to Coach making history. It's unbelievable for him.
It's incredible. I mean, for 4 years, I've had to listen to the people hating on that man, and they don't understand how incredible he is behind doors, how genius he is, and the blessing he is to be at Clemson. There are people that support him thick and through, and we love that, and we love everybody, but everybody needs to know that Coach Brownell is arguably the best coach to come through Clemson in terms of X's and O's, and we're trying to prove that right now.
Wow.
Yeah, that's great, Joe and PJ, but you guys aren't going to be on this team next year.
Well, that's not Brownell's fault.
No, but you guys are not going to be on this team next year. So great. I'm glad that you support the guy. Maybe come back and be on his staff or something. That's what I'd like to see you do. Coming up next, we go to the mouth, Lawton Swan of Clemson Sports Talk at Clemson Sports on Twitter. I'm gonna throw this back at Lawton Swan. He has been a Brad Brownell apologist. We'll see if he wants to fight me some more on this. That's okay. I got my dukes up. I'll fight. Lawton Swan next here on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Familiar names, new show on the Fan Upstate here on Afternoon Drive. It's Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. We bring in a name, a face, a voice that you all know very, very well. Big fan of the show, a big good friend of the show. I'm a big fan of his show. We're all friends. We're all fans of each other. We bring in Lawton Swan of Clemson Sports Talk at Clemson Sports on Twitter or at Lawton Swan. That's Swan with 2 N's is where you can find him. Lawton, I've just spent the last 15 minutes screaming into the ether. Some people agree, some people don't. Is Brownell safe after achieving what he's achieved and nothing else this season? Is a Sweet 16 for a guy whose contract runs through 2026 safe just by achieving a Sweet 16? Or do you think we're still sitting in a holding pattern, a wait and see over the next 2 years of his deal?
I don't know if he'll get a new deal, but I don't know all of the insights of his contract. It might be in there that if he makes a run to the Sweet 16, that he does get a new one. I know coaches sometimes have incentive performance-based deals, but I mean, at this point, if you factor in the fact that Clemson's only got 5 Sweet 16 visits in their history and Brad Brownell has 2 of them, yeah, I think what the Tigers have done over the past couple of days, obviously the way they really dominated New Mexico and then really had control of that Baylor game until the waning moments. But yeah, I think he's done enough. And I think for Clemson Tiger fans that are kind of in that fire Brad Brownell category, this is their worst nightmare to see the Tigers performing as well as they have in the tournament. But I think those same people would probably tell you they were screaming at their television last night when RJ Godfrey makes his key free throws late. So, I think those people are probably talking a little bit out of both sides of their mouth at this point.
Hey, Lawton, I said on Twitter, this is Cole, by the way, I said on Twitter yesterday that if Clemson were to punch their ticket to the Sweet 16, which they did, that it would be the greatest non-football weekend for Clemson in a long time. Can you think of a weekend or a day or two that was better overall between the 3 baseball wins, the sweep of Florida State, the way they came back in both of those wins, the last 2 games, and then punching their ticket to the Sweet 16? Can you think of a better time or a few days for Clemson non-football related?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. Obviously, if you're talking about a span of days where you kind of have what Clemson fans just went through, I would be hard pressed to say that they've ever pieced together anything like that. And it's probably more so because of what they did in baseball to come from behind in those games against Florida State. Because if you go back to Clemson's last Sweet 16 run, the way they played against Auburn to get to the Sweet 16 to face Kansas, I mean, that was one of those games where it felt like Gabe DeVoe could hit a shot from anywhere on the court. I mean, Clemson just obliterated an Auburn team that nobody really gave the Tigers much of a chance to beat. But when you add in what baseball did, and I had Eric Bakich on the program today to talk about it, I'll tell you what, guys, I've never seen that at any level in baseball, let alone, remember, that was an undefeated. That Florida State team was 19-0 entering the first game of Saturday's doubleheader. And to have Clemson win the way they did, and then on top of that, the basketball team on Sunday, yeah. I don't know many Clemson fans that could piece together a 3-4 day window like that.
Lawton Swan joins us on the show. It's Wire to Wire, a brand new show here on the Fan Upstate with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Yeah, Lawton, if the first 2 of RJ Godfrey's free throws don't go in, then the Fire Brownell voices may have a lot more ammo today. I mean, it sure as heck helps that Baylor missed 2 free throws when they really needed them to tie, and then RJ Godfrey follows that up. This is a guy that was shooting in the high 50% over the course of the season. And man, he was nothing but net on all 4. I don't know of anybody else who has been more clutch down the stretch, a guy who's not a very good basketball, is not a very good free throw shooter. But on a scale, Lawton, of loose as a goose to couldn't fit a greased BB up there, how tight were you clenching down the stretch, starting at the 6-minute mark? Because Clemson had a 16-point lead. They let it get all the way down to 2 points, which felt like, oh, here we go. Clemson's about to give this game away.
Yeah, I thought the big exchange in the game took place when P.J. Hall, remember, when they flagged PJ Hall for a foul, fourth foul, and he came out of the game, and then they went back during the break and fixed it and brought him in, got a quick dunk, and then, I just continued to think throughout the game that Walter was flopping. Well, PJ runs through the screen, gets taken out. Walter goes to the line, misses a free throw, gets batted around and goes out of bounds. Baylor ball. They've kind of got the momentum at that point. And then Chase Hunter gets a steal off the inbounds, kind of tips the ball away. And the Tigers go back down, and with 6:41 left, Shiflin over the shoulder, the whirling dervish puts that in. And that was Clemson's last, field goal in the game. Everything else came from the free throw line. And this is a program that Clemson Tiger people will tell you has traditionally really struggled at the free throw line. And then to have a guy in Godfrey go there, a 56% free throw shooter, and to not just make the free throws, but to be confident in the moment. I thought the statements that he had after the game about his focus, the fact that, he just thinks about, his relationship with the Lord and things like that. I thought that was really powerful to see that happen in that moment for that kid. And what a great guy he is for this team, because, he's not just, you said, he's not a great free throw shooter. And that's right. He's not the most overly skilled basketball player either, but man, he contributes in a big way for this team when either Ian Shefflin or, PJ Hall can't be in the ball game. And for him to have that moment and then get to go put Clemson's name on that Sweet 16 board in the locker room afterwards, I thought was a big deal. For me, it's kind of weird, Diesel, right? Like, I know being a Clemson show and a Clemson website and everything, people think I live and die by all of this stuff. I don't really, because it's all great content, no matter how it goes. Watching my family, getting the text messages from my nephews, I think those people were pretty wired up about how it was playing out. But I was just kind of taking it all in. I will say, once it got to the point where you knew Clemson was going to win, I've always said I take Clemson wins and losses in basketball much tougher than I do in football. For whatever reason, the football results, I think it's because of expectations, right? Like, nobody ever expects Clemson to be great in basketball. So when they do, and I am a graduate, I'm like, yes. So when it got to the point where you knew it was over, I will tell you, I did let out a very audible yes, because I just want to be able to remember an Elite Eight. And the last time they went to the Elite Eight was 1980. That wasn't a 64-team tournament. They got beat by UCLA. It was a really good game, but I don't know. I don't recall any of that. And Gamecock fans, I think, will tell you, the run they had to the Final Four just a few short years ago was probably one of the more incredible moments in their program's history. And I'm not just talking about basketball, right? I'm talking about all sports. And so I think I just want that for Clemson fans selfishly. I want them to be able to have that run where next week on a Monday, we're talking about, holy cow, if you win 2 games, you're the national champs in hoops.
Lawton Swan joining us on the program. You can find them on Twitter at Clemson Sports. Hey, Lawton, one thing that I was having a heated discussion about last night in a group text was PJ Hall, right? Coming off the floor in foul trouble once again. Last 6.5 minutes or so of the first half, he didn't play. Second half, obviously, he fouls out toward the end of the game. Was it just me, or in your opinion, do you feel like Clemson last night, and maybe even the first game of the tournament, has found a way to navigate a game in order to win without PJ? I don't want that to come across the wrong way. And somebody will take it the wrong way, I'm sure, and say, oh, Cole said they don't need PJ Hall. I'm not saying that, but last night, to me, when PJ Hall did come back on the floor, was kind of when Baylor did creep back in. Am I totally wrong on that?
No, in the plus minus, he was the only guy in the minus for Clemson in the whole ball game. And it was pretty evident that when he was on the court, Clemson at times wasn't as good as they were with him on the bench. And I think that is a testament to, kind of where this team is, and the fact, and I thought the announcers did a good job of making this point. Ian Shefflin is not just some sideshow Bob, right? I mean, he's a guy that can shoot from the perimeter, much like PJ Hall. The duo's really good in the high-low game passing. Where I think PJ Hall right now is not getting the benefit of the doubt is in some of those foul calls that I mentioned. Like, I thought there were 2 specific calls where Walter kind of flopped. I thought the one where PJ Hall ran through the screen. I watched that thing back 4 or 5 times, and I got to tell you, I mean, PJ Hall, it's not like he bowled the kid over. He just, he flopped, and PJ's got to be smarter. And then the one where there was the battle for the rebound late on PJ's 5th foul of the game. I mean, you would have thought PJ hit that kid with a baseball bat the way he crumpled to the floor. And you go back and watch the replay, and I didn't see really anything outside of maybe PJ stepping on his foot or something that kind of set him off balance. I don't think that Zach Edey, for example, I don't think Edey would get those types of cheap fouls called on him in a ball game. And PJ Hall's been a great player for Clemson. The good news is what you said, though. The Tigers have found a way to play good basketball with him, off the court. I think they'll certainly need him against Arizona. I still got to go in and watch the Wildcats a little bit more. Thankfully, with the YouTube TV subscription I've got all the games recorded, so I'm going to go in and check them out. But the other thing, too, that I think everybody's kind of sleeping on, and I think you got to give credit, Joe Girard defensively last night. There's not a kid on that court for Baylor that he should really be able to defend. And it's not like he led the team in steals or anything like that. But I got to give Joe Girard credit because he was able to be good enough defensively that they could keep him on the court. And you know what he does for that team in terms of spacing on the offensive end because of how well he can shoot the ball. And if he couldn't have stayed on the court because he couldn't guard anybody, I think Clemson would have been in a lot of trouble. So you got to give him some credit for just being willing to give that effort on the defensive end of the court because that's not his, quote unquote forte. That's not what he was really brought to Clemson to be, but he had to be a good defender yesterday. And I thought he did a pretty decent job, to be honest with you.
Lawton Swan at Clemson Sports on Twitter is where you can find him. This is Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson on the Fan Upstate. Cole, there were an awful lot of expectations for Eric Bakich when he took over the program. The program felt like it was kind of slipping a little bit. Eric Bakich has done nothing but get them up to the top 5 in the country, number 3 in the newest D1 baseball poll. You said that you had a conversation with him today. Can you give us a little taste of what he had to say, and how is it that he's been able to master the expectations so early?
20 years, he told me, 20 years of really getting focus on mindset and getting players to slow down at the plate. And he said that, an older guy like Blake Wright right now is somebody that's just a little bit more mature in his ways. And so the game can be a little bit slower for him than maybe some of the young guys. But he talked about how the mental aspect of the game, he felt like is the thing that's been most important to the success that he had. And he talked about how that went all the way back, in fact, guys, maybe even more than 20 years, to some of the stuff that he learned when he was playing growing up and just trying to get better and learn from Jack Leggett and Tim Corbin and Kevin O'Sullivan. And, when people say that to you, you go, okay, is that really it? Is that really what's going on here? But then I look at those D1 baseball rankings and what teams do I see there? I see Florida and I see Vanderbilt and I see Clemson, all guys that kind of came out of that Jack Leggett tree. And I think there's something to it. I think Clemson football fans can relate to how Dabo Swinney sort of changed that mindset. The best is the standard, and that it was always a roller coaster under every other coach that was there. And it just, kind of solidified itself. And I don't know how long this run that Clemson baseball is on right now will last this season, but they're 22-2, and obviously they're not out of any ball game at any point in time. And that was really the emphasis that he said. It was all about the mental aspect of the game and really keeping these guys on an even keel, no matter if you're up, down, in a tight ball game late, just having that same mental focus the whole ball game.
Well, Lawton, there it is. There you said it. Eric Bakich seems to have gotten Clemson off the roller coaster of up and down seasons. And hey, all I'm arguing is that maybe Clemson basketball's Eric Bakich is out there and could get Clemson basketball off of that roller coaster of results. Hey, you and I are going to argue this till we're blue in the face. And truth is, we're never going to change each other's minds, but that's what makes it great. Every single time we get to have you on. That is Lawton Swan of Clemson Sports Talk. Really appreciate your time today, Lawton.
Yeah, man. Look, I'll say this about Brownell real quick, and I know you guys probably got to hit a break, but here's the thing, right? Like, I don't feel like you can move the goalpost. And the goalpost was set. You got to get into the NCAA tournament, and Clemson obviously found their way in with what they did with scheduling this year by comparison to last year. And I still think you can make an argument that last year's team with Hunter Tyson could have made an eerily similar run to maybe what you've seen this year. So I think the fact that they made it to the tournament and now that they're in the Sweet 16 with a chance to go to the Elite Eight, I get the years, Tiger fans. I understand all the years. But at this point, I think Brad Brownell's done everything he needed to do to secure more time in Tiger Town.
Lawton, you're the best. Thanks, pal.
Thanks, man.
It's going to be real tough for Clemson in this Sweet 16 matchup, facing off against an Arizona team that's averaging 87.6 points a game.
They're a different animal, Diesel.
72 points a game. Maybe the way that Clemson plays, even if they lose, maybe the way they lose will affect Brad Brownell's.
You mean if it's close?
If it's close,
or
you maybe bring him back. If they blow him out, maybe it brings back some of those voices, gives them a little more amplitude.
I'll make you a bet. There's no way they fire him. I don't care if they lose by 70. He's coming back.
That's fair.
He's coming back, Diesel.
That's fair.
Speaking of coming back, we are going to be back after this. We will keep it rolling. A lot to get to. Some daily wires, as well as Shohei Ohtani news to circle back to on the other side. He's Diesel. I'm Cole Bryson. We appreciate you tuning in. Stay tuned. We're going to keep it rolling wire to wire right here on the Fan Upstate.
It's Wire to Wire, a brand new show on the Fan Upstate. I'm Diesel. He is Cole Bryson. We're two guys that you probably have heard on this station at some point over the past couple of years if you've been paying any attention at all. But this is the very first time that he and I are rocking it out together on our very own show. Very first day of Wire, the number 2 Wire.
Unless you just moved here, you know?
Yeah, unless
Brand
you just
new.
moved here, in which case,
Welcome.
you're one of 30,000 people who have moved here in the past year, something that a lot of our locals have a big problem with. Truthfully, the locals bitch and moan about it all the time. But we'd be willing to bet that's not going to cause you to turn the car around and go back home. You moved here because you
That's
love
the
it.
dumbest thing. You
Yeah.
know, not to get on a rabbit trail.
No,
here,
let's go
but
down
like,
the rabbit hole.
I can just think of this from a business standpoint. You know, somebody who has a little small business like I do, or whatever you do, whether it's an ice cream shop or whatever you do, car salesman. What sane person would think more people is a bad thing for any? I mean, isn't more money always better? Well, you're not going to get more money unless more people move here.
I'm going to be real with you and tell you exactly who it is, the type of person that doesn't want people moving to the upstate. Selfish people.
You think so?
Selfish people don't want new people moving to the upstate.
I like
It's
new
the people who say things like, oh, you're going to make my drive to work longer. Oh, there's going to be too many cars. Oh, there's too many new things being built. These
Well-
are selfish people who only want their commute to be faster, who only want more green space. I'm with you on the green space thing, but you can't turn the clock of progress back. You
And
can't do it.
for you and I, who are both radio hosts, why would we not want more?
We want more people.
I mean, I've never understood that.
Well,
Let's just keep it small. Let's just not have new people and not have growth and not have more revenue. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, who thinks that way?
yeah, and it boggles my mind. Now here we are going down the rabbit hole. Boggles my mind
We're
that
here.
the Greenville County Council turned down the proposed Triumph Stadium in Malden when it was an already realized, which means already in the bank account, out of town hotel tax that was going to pay for it.
You think
Which
it'll-
means people who didn't live here, who came here to visit, they got hotel rooms. Those hotel rooms were taxed. You weren't taxed, local residents. You weren't taxed for this. Their money went to pay for this stadium. And the county council said, nah. And everybody else said, well, I don't want my taxes to go up. Guess what? Your taxes weren't going up. It was already paid for. It was already realized. It was in the bank. You were gonna pull off the greatest heist ever. You were gonna get people who don't live here to pay for a brand new, beautiful, shiny stadium.
Yeah.
But you said no. Don't get it.
One of the things, and as I hinted at earlier in the show, Diesel and I have a lot coming down the pipeline for our listeners who we ask to turn it on and leave it on, right? We have a lot coming, Diesel. We really do. We've worked hard at preparing and making this show the best it can be. And you and I both believe that what we have coming and the ideas and philosophies that we have, it is going to be the best it's ever been. One of those things that we're going to implement is daily wires, right? We want this show, let's say we have 12 topics lined up. We don't ever want this show to be, oh, well, we've got this coming up next. So it doesn't matter if Michi just got, or they just announced Michi hit the transfer portal. We're not going to talk about that, Diesel, because we already have this Shohei Ohtani topic written down, right? So daily wires, man. I mean, you and I have done a really good job of compiling a list of daily wires, which I'll start off, Diesel. One thing we haven't mentioned, a little bit of a coaching news here in the upstate, USC Upstate basketball coach. This broke earlier this afternoon. Dave Dickerson, the former basketball coach at USC Upstate, is leaving for an assistant basketball job at Ohio State. He was previously at Ohio State as an assistant, but a local collegiate basketball program will be now. These will be looking for a new head basketball coach.
Good on you, Dave Dickerson. I'm sure he's going back to a healthy little pay bump.
You think?
And I do wonder we saw this in football. We saw Sean Elliott leave a head coaching position at Georgia State to go be an assistant at South Carolina.
Right.
We saw, blanking on his name now, the former head coach at South Alabama leave to go become an assistant at Alabama. All these are great jobs. We're not saying that they're not great jobs, but you're going from head man to an assistant, and we wonder just how much of the transfer portal issues are involved with this.
Yeah.
I mean,
Womack is who you're talking
yeah,
about.
Kane Womack. Yeah, and maybe, look, these programs are going to get better for it. Alabama will get better for it. South Carolina will get better for the head coaching experience that Sean Elliott has. So, I mean, it's always a good thing, but it seems to me maybe some of these head coaches are wanting to spread some of the burden of NIL and re-recruiting your roster year in and year out to some other head coaches, former head coaches.
But Diesel, this is becoming a trend. It's not like it's just one or two. I mean, you're seeing, and maybe this was expected, but you're seeing assistant coaches' jobs being more valued than a head job. And 5 years ago, that wouldn't really have made sense.
Well, what we're going to see is we're going to see the collective head coaching experience just keep moving on up the ladder. Even if they're not head coaches at these major programs, they want to be attached to these major programs. So the head coaching experience is going to concentrate there. But here's the truth. Power loves a vacuum. Whenever there's a job opening, somebody will take it.
It is.
Guess what? The Georgia State head coaching job didn't sit vacant for long. Even though it maybe wasn't the most attractive job, it got filled. So there will always, maybe it makes the path a little bit easier for rising coaches to be head coaches to get those jobs.
Hey, another Daily Wire happening right now. Shohei Ohtani is speaking to the media right now as we speak. One quote says, he is very can you get any more general than this? He's very sad and shocked.
Oh,
shocker about the theft allegations against former interpreter.
And we are going to get deeper into that story coming up in the 6 o'clock hour as it's time for us to get off to a break. It's Wire to Wire on the Fan Upstate with Diesel and Cole Bryson.
That's right. It is Wire2Wire. We're so glad you have chosen us to be a part of your evening. He is Diesel. I am Cole Bryson. If you're just tuning in for the first time, that's right, Diesel. This is a new program. This is not, it's shiny and new. This is not the same old, same old. I want to say thanks to all the streamers today. We're up to 170 live right now. We appreciate you joining us via the stream. Diesel, during the break, pulled up the Shohei Ohtani presser as he is speaking to the media currently. And from what Diesel has translated to me,
because I know so much Japanese,
and you like to gamble, and you have a lot of money like his, and you make $4 million a year, Diesel has translated some pretty juicy nuggets out of this. Is he still speaking right now?
No, they were just finishing up their closing remarks. It didn't seem like it was a very long press conference. And look, I'm sure his people are saying, Shohei, keep it short.
It was just a teaser.
Keep it as short as possible. Look, the more time you spend with the media, the more questions they get to ask, the more they get to probe, and the more you may say that you don't actually intend to say. Well, what was really interesting to me, and again, we only got to hear a little part of it because we pulled it up in the middle of the break there. Shohei Ohtani said that Ippei, his former interpreter, sent money to himself out of his accounts. Whereas previously, what we had heard was that Ippei said he and Shohei logged into Shohei's account and sent money to himself.
So say that
8
again.
different times at the total of just about $4.5 million.
Okay, so now
the story is that it's more in line with the previous story, which was theft.
Yeah, but how were Shohei's bank statements on the bills that paid the debts?
Well, the money came from Shohei Ohtani's accounts.
Okay.
And from what we just heard in that press conference, Ohtani said that Ippei Matsuhara, his former interpreter, logged into his accounts and sent money to himself from Shohei's accounts, which, again, aligns with the previous story of theft.
This is so bad. Baseball, like, they're starving for positivity, right? Yeah. They're starving for people to watch the regular season games. And Diesel, on March the 25th, you and I are sitting here talking about possibly the best player, one of the best to ever play the game, being accused of, I don't know, just a little tiny bombshell of millions of dollars. Does it even matter, though, of what he's saying now? I mean, like, it doesn't matter, in my opinion, what's said.
Yeah. We got the Rob Brown Show on the YouTube stream. I don't know if Rob's watching on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. However, any of you are listening, watching, consuming this content, we appreciate it. Mm-hmm. Rob says, I found it very interesting that he came out in full gear and not in street clothes or a business suit. His image is starting to look as manufactured as Russell Wilson. Remember when Russell Wilson, his teammates, started to hate him for running wind sprints up and down the aisles on the flight to the London game?
Yes.
Let's see here. Trey Davis says, Dear Honorable Mr. Ohtani, I've learned a little bit of Japanese from Styx's Mr. Roboto. I'm also very proficient in Google Translate, and it looks like...
No. Keep reading, Diesel. What's that say?
I don't... Whatever I translate that to is going to sound racist, so I'm not going to say that part.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, it looks like, honestly, it looks like somebody threw a handful of pasta on the ground, and there's just some squiggles and lines back and forth across. Look, this timeline has gotten very murky, very dirty.
Yeah.
And updates were coming hour by hour, starting just a few days ago. This has been lightning fast. Now, again, if Shohei had willingly helped out his buddy, I don't care how rich I am. I'm not good enough friends with anybody. Sorry, Rob Brown. That I'm going to give somebody $4.5 million.
You don't think so?
I'm not doing that. That is not coming. That money is not coming out of my bank account. I appreciate that Shohei maybe is a nice enough guy to do that. But the timelines came out that they were hanging out in the dugout, having themselves a great grand time, holding hands, skipping along, singing Kumbaya. Well, then there was some alleged theft. And then Ipe Matsuhara came out and had his interview with ESPN where he said, no. He and I are such close friends that I got deep into some gambling debt, and Shohei agreed to fork out $500,000 8 times to cover my debts. What a great friend. What a pal, right? And now Shohei is saying, well, I didn't do that. I didn't log into my laptop with Ipe Matsuhara to send this money 8 different times. He did it. He sent the money to himself. And man, this is just
but my question is though, how is Shohei ever going to be able to prove to anyone that, oh, I didn't do it? He's the one that did it. His name being on it is going to bury him.
The paper trail matters.
The paper trail. There's no way he can sit there and prove, oh, I had nothing to do with it. How do you prove that? How do you sit there and say, oh, he took it out of my, you know what I mean? There's no way to sit there.
Everything legitimate says you were involved.
Yeah, but I mean, if it came out of his account, buddy, I'm sorry, but you're toast.
Yeah.
However, to the point you and I were talking about earlier, we always play the game what will happen versus what should happen. What should happen, if Rob Manfred cares about the game, it's already in a I don't want to call it a bad state, but it's not in the best state. So what should happen, they ought to figure out a way to take a wheelbarrow full of dirt with about 14 beautiful roses and pour the dirt on it and put the roses out and the flowers and the petunias and the whatever your choice of flower is and make it as pretty as possible, because I got news for you, Diesel. This is not good for baseball.
We to this point believe that Shohei Ohtani was squeaky clean. Just the sound that my chair, no, I can't make the chair arm do it again.
There you go.
It made a squeaky sound before. We were led to believe that Shohei Ohtani was a squeaky clean baseball player. And that seems very much not to be the case. His reputation will be forever wrapped up in this scandal. If it's never proved, the best case scenario for Shohei is if it's proven, and I don't know how you would do this, if it's proven that no wagers were ever placed on baseball, because that is league rule number 21. Quote, players and team employees are prohibited from placing wagers, even legal bets, on baseball. That is part 1 of the rule. You cannot, under any circumstances, if you work for a Major League Baseball team, gamble on baseball. It also prohibits them from wagering with illegal or offshore bookmakers. And that right there, the fact that this wager was placed with an illegal bookmaker,
yeah,
whether it was by Ipe Matsuhara, whether the money came from Shohei directly to pay off illegal gambling debts. I mean, justice for Pete Rose here would see Shohei Ohtani banned from Major League Baseball.
You know, what's interesting is in the 12 minutes that he spoke, he did not answer any questions, and he completely denied all involvement. So what this tells me is Ohtani's camp said, look, here's what we're going to say. This is what we're going to stick to. And the only way for us to save face in this whole dilemma, scandal, whatever you want to call it, is just to deny everything and blame it all on the interpreter.
Yeah.
Who's the fallout guy? You know, I just don't know. Like, do you just completely give access? If I'm a millionaire or billionaire and you're my interpreter, do I just give you, hey, buddy, here's my routing number. Hey, Diesel, here's my checking number. Get what you need. How do you steal $4 million?
Unless Shohei is so dumb that his password is baseball 123 exclamation point, which, by the way, now you're going to have to change your password because I just put it out there on the internet.
Correct. I'll do that right now.
How how does his interpreter get into his accounts? And Rob Brown here says you can't punish him if you can't prove he did anything. The paper trail,
but had his name on it.
Involved. Had his name on it.
Regardless of who made the bets, like, I don't know. I guess Rob Manfred is happy that he's taken this stance because it does save face for MLB as well. But like, there is going to be someone asked a question. If there were questions allowed to be asked today, I would assume a reporter would say, well, if you're not guilty, why was your name on the statement? Yeah. Like, how does that happen? Again, he may have had access to Shohei's bank accounts. I don't know that. I think there will be some more details that come out on that. But what do they always say, Diesel? A liar, man. Like, the dude's a liar. Like, the Ipe, however you say his name, he created an entire fake biography for the Dodgers to put on their website, which none of it was true. Nobody knows where he came from.
It was Denzel Washington in Training Day. Said it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And right now, we can prove that money came from Shohei Ohtani's accounts to pay off an illegal bookie. That's what we can prove right now. And everybody else can say things like, well, we don't think that he walked in with a bag of cash and gave it directly to the bookie. We don't think he ever gambled on this. What you think and what you want to believe, because he's the greatest baseball player in the game right now, is irrelevant. We have to look at the burden of proof. And what the question is for Major League Baseball and for Rob Manfred, what is the burden of proof to prove that Shohei Ohtani was involved in this? Money from Shohei Ohtani's bank accounts went directly to pay off a debt with an illegal bookie. And if that is enough for Major League Baseball, and it has certainly been enough for Major League Baseball for years with Pete Rose, you can't let him off.
So Joe Pompliano hosts the Joe Pomp Show on Twitter, Diesel. Two interesting things he tweeted just within the last few minutes. The first thing he said was Shohei Ohtani says he has never bet on sports or asked anyone to do it on his behalf. He says, Ipe has been stealing money from my account and telling lies. I'm very saddened and shocked that someone who I trusted has done this. Now, 3 minutes ago, Joe Pompliano tweeted out, Diesel, Shohei Ohtani's press conference avoided two important questions. Obviously, no questions were allowed to be asked, right? So you can avoid questions when nobody's allowed to ask questions. The two questions that Joe says were avoided were, number one, how did Ipe have access to his bank account, what I just said a few minutes ago? And number two, how did he not have how did he not notice multiple $500,000 payments leaving his account? Are you so rich that you don't notice 4.5 coming out of your account? Joe continues to say it's hard to believe any story without hearing answers to those two questions, which one of those is what I brought up a few minutes ago.
The answer to the first question is the smoking gun. How did he get access to your accounts? Why would an $85,000 a year employee?
He's his boy, I guess.
Why would he have, look, man, I have a feeling that you and I are going to have a long and fruitful relationship and career together as radio partners.
Right.
But I am never giving you my bank account login information.
You're not.
Not going to happen.
Okay.
Now, unless you're telling me, unless you want to do a reverse theft and put money into my account, in which case, let me scroll it down on a Post-it note for you.
That's great.
There's no way that this goes unpunished by Major League Baseball.
I just love that it's happening to the Dodgers. Like the team that's tried to buy a championship and they only have one championship in the last so-and-so years. I don't know exactly how many.
They worked out a ridiculous deal with so much money down the line for Shohei to get the guy. And then, boom, this is what they get hit with. Couldn't happen to a nicer bunch.
Like there's a lot of people saying on Twitter, like, I believe Shohei 100%. Addicts steal from people. People in too deep steal from people. Ipe was in too deep. Case closed. Like, at the end of the day, that might be true, but how do you know? So here's what I predict.
If they're such boys, why does Ipe put his boy at risk in that way?
Well,
because he doesn't want to have his kneecaps blown open by an illegal bookie.
Yeah, maybe so.
By a fat guy named Tony in an alley.
It's probably better to throw him under the bus and have your kneecaps blown off, I would assume. But here's what I predict to happen, Diesel. The camp of Shohei Ohtani and the camp of MLB, whoever convened and talked about what would be said at this press conference, they've got to be on the same page. Like, hey, this is what needs to be said in order for us to close this case. If you say this, this, and this, we can't close the case. I predict they'll close the case, blame it 100% on the interpreter, and case closed, move on. They can't afford to let anything happen to their precious Shohei Ohtani. MLB's in bad enough. Again, we don't talk about the games. We talk about gambling, an interpreter stealing money. That's the MLB's problem right now. So, no, he's not. If I had to bet right now, what will happen? Nothing will happen to him. I don't think it will.
Well, what I believe is going to happen is all of these learn a language fast programs are going to make an awful lot of money because there are going to be thousands and thousands of Americans learning how to heckle in Japanese.
Yeah, that's true.
You remember how long Jameis Winston had to hear about crab legs?
He's probably still does.
Still hearing about crab legs.
Mm-hmm.
Publix's greatest customer. This is just ugly, and I guarantee we're not done with this. We're not done with revelations dropping, because now that Ipe had his 90-minute conversation with ESPN, now that press conferences are coming out, there's no way that he's not going to speak out unless somebody's paying him hush money to stop talking about this.
And it could happen.
That could happen. Then we wonder, like, hey, where's that money coming from?
I get, and Rob Brown talking about the, being innocent until proven guilty. I get all of that. I'm just saying it being tied to his accounts, where I'm not saying that proves him guilty. I'm just saying, like, whoa, wait a minute. If I'm Rob Manfred, I'm asking questions. I'm going to stop the freaking press,
Look, if Saul Goodman and Jesse Pinkman can figure out money laundering, running this money through an alternative bank account before sending it on to Ipe Matsuhara's bank accounts and to his bookie, then Shohei Ohtani, who's a smart guy, should have figured that out as well. You got to pass it through an intermediary. You got to get yourself some nail salons. You got to get yourself a laser tag, something. Trey Davis.
I like what Trey says.
How bad does this hurt Shohei's marketability? His contract is set up to be paid over a longer period of time to lessen the taxes. Well, it certainly hurts his ability to be a face of Major League Baseball, this squeaky clean face of Major League Baseball. That hurts that in a big way.
TRAE Trey texts in and says, if the baseball, I can't read it without laughing. If the baseball glove doesn't fit, he must acquit.
Look, I know here that, let's see, Rob says, oh, damn, sorry, I didn't know what came over me there. Oh, he's excited. He's excited for opening day. He just wants
one
to
person
is.
Rugs. Yeah, one person
wants to sweep it.
You've got to if you're a baseball guy. If you're a baseball guy, you have no choice but to sweep it. I told you, find the nearest rug and find the broom.
I thought baseball guys were about the purity of the game. This is impure.
Yeah, we are the purest remaining. This is America's pastime. Yeah. But you're the face of your league.
See, isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting that after state after state after state is legalizing gambling, which we all thought, like the idea of, well, if we start up NIL, it's going to get all these under the table payments on top of the table. We'll all know about it. Guess what? Illegal stuff is still happening. It's just happening in a different way. And as gambling is becoming more prevalent across the country, state by state, this is happening more.
It's just so, like, what's so hard about it? It's just so hard to regulate. Like, it's so hard to prove. Like, for example, this is a great example. This is a great case, rather. It's hard to prove. Like, even Diesel, if the money comes out of your account, your bank account, you can still be innocent? Wow.
Yeah.
This is hard to prove.
If we have on paper that it was your money, somehow you're still like, come on.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I really do like Shohei Ohtani being the face of baseball because at the end of the day, being a Braves fan, I do want baseball to be relevant. I love the Braves. However, I've said this many times, even as a Braves fan, I don't watch other games. I don't sit down and watch a game between Chicago and Los Angeles. Now, it's different if you're talking about college football, right? People love college football. Baseball, it's a different world. The average Joe doesn't sit down to watch Chicago and LA play a baseball game, right? You got to be a baseball guy to do that. So if you're wanting to get there, I don't know how in the world you can even begin to repair this. Because whether he's guilty or not, whether anything happens to him or not, just the publicity of it, even as Trey said on the stream, not only does the publicity hurt Ohtani, it also hurts the face of the MLB. It hurts the MLB big time, Diesel. I mean, what league wants to have to go through this?
Yeah, honestly, the best thing that could happen for Shohei Ohtani is a train wreck off camera. They need something big to happen somewhere else to take the heat off of this story. They need something major to bury this story. But sadly, this is going to follow Shohei Ohtani for the rest of his career. It absolutely will. When we come back, we're going to do a little experiment, an experimental segment.
I like experiments.
Called Man Day.
Okay.
It's Monday.
Yep.
What's the manliest thing you did over the weekend?
Oof.
I want to hear from you. So get ready. 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. It's Wire to Wire, emanating live from the Ingalls Market studio on the Fan Upstate. That's right. It's a brand new show on the Fan Upstate. It's called Wire to Wire. I'm Diesel. He is Cole Bryson.
Let's
Two names
go.
that hopefully you've heard of before on the Fan Upstate, but if you haven't, if you're brand new to the Fan Upstate today, welcome. Thanks for following us. Thanks for finding us. However you choose to listen to this show, whether it be live over the air on 97.7 FM in Greenville, 97.1 FM in Spartanburg, whether you listen live over the stream on the free Odyssey app, whether you listen back on some podcasting platform like Spotify, like Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, we appreciate it.
And follow Diesel and I on Twitter. Diesel is at Diesel on Radio.
Yep.
I am at the Cole Bryson. Give us a follow, and I will give you a follow back. I believe Diesel will as well, but we want you to be a part of the program. Diesel, we've had an outpouring of interaction today, and we absolutely love it.
Loving the fact that the stream has been north of 150 viewers throughout the entire show. That's huge. Thank you so much. So many comments coming in, supporting the new show. We appreciate that so much. Let's see. Trey Davis here on Facebook, on the Facebook stream, says, I think they should let Pete Rose in no matter what now. Well, Trey Davis, there is a difference right now, as far as we know, of what happened with Pete Rose and Shohei Ohtani.
And that'll never happen.
We know that Pete Rose gambled on baseball. We know that he gambled. He admitted as much that he gambled on baseball. It's rule number 21. Don't gamble on baseball. Now, the interesting thing is Pete Rose always gambled on himself to beat certain statistical parlays every day. Props every day.
Yeah, for 2 years.
For 2 years, he gambled on himself, and he said, you know what?
Which is a good thing normally.
I'm going to bet the over on 2.5 hits in this game.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go out there and get 3 hits. I mean, it's rare that somebody is able to gamble on themselves and then go out there and win, but you can't do that. Obviously, you can't gamble on yourself. That is the big difference. Trey Bowes says, can Ohtani be a spokesperson for FanDuel like Rob Gronkowski?
That's funny.
Was Rob Gronkowski a spokesman for FanDuel while he was playing?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I would probably bet no.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can't do that.
I'd probably say no.
But
no, Pete Rose they'll never go back on
no, they'll never let him in. As much as you may like Pete Rose, and Pete Rose will go down as one of the all-time great ball players, but he will forever, like Shoeless Joe Jackson, be wrapped up in the controversy of gambling on baseball. And Shohei Ohtani, unless he has just the best PR team ever or something wild happens like an asteroid hits the earth, people are going to be talking about Shohei Ohtani's gambling scandal forever. Now, the story has changed back and forth. The story at one point was that his interpreters stole money. And then the story was, no, we logged into his accounts together. He's such a nice guy. He's paying off my debts. And now today, just 15 minutes ago, the audio from Shohei Ohtani himself in a statement, he said, I didn't know anything about this. He logged into my accounts. So we're back to the theft.
Real quick,
story.
Diesel, which of those do you believe? Because I don't think Shohei's telling the truth now. I think he was a part of it.
I don't either. And look, I don't know what it's like to manage money on that scale. Maybe.
Yeah, me either.
Maybe Shohei Ohtani said, you know what? I make the money. I have money people take care of the money.
Yeah, but your interpreter's not money.
But his accountant should have seen that. Like, hey, there have been days and weeks when I haven't logged into my bank account and looked at my bank account. I would have to assume that my bank would send me a text message that says, hey, just so you know,
$4.5 million
was taken out of your account for the 8th time. You would think there would be some sort of an alert to let him know.
I think my alert would say declined. Not, hey, by the way, $500,000 just left.
Yeah. I don't see it. Shohei had to have been involved.
What kind of alert do you get? I mean, did the banks not know you on a personal enough level when 500,000 leaves your account?
You better be getting a personal phone call.
No
You
doubt.
better be getting a personal phone call. And look, here's genuine advice for Shohei Ohtani going forward. Outside of this scandal here, and I think this is going to hurt Shohei's marketability, we can't listen and understand what he's saying. Everything is always passed through an intermediary. He will always have an interpreter until Shohei Ohtani learns to speak English. He's gonna have to learn. Look, we as Americans, we love it when people make the effort and they show that they're trying to learn our language, that they want to assimilate into American culture to this point. Now, I don't know. I don't know if Shohei's, taking classes. I don't know if Shohei's doing the, study for 15 minutes a day and learn to speak English online training courses. Babbel. I don't know if he's doing that or not.
Babbel.
But it would go a long way if he was trying. And he has not shown us publicly that he is trying to learn to speak English. And that would be a way, because we all look at like, oh, that's charming. It's charming that he's trying. Like his English is bad, but he's trying. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you get to that point where you speak good enough English, you don't need an interpreter anymore. So now you don't have somebody potentially stealing money from you.
From the 497, going to start using the Shohei defense in my everyday life. Honey, I swear that the $800 cash withdrawal at Spearmint Rhino was for Cole and Diesel.
Hey, if you've lived around the upstate long enough, you may have had a charge from Elephant Ink on your bank account. And your wife is like, hey, what is Elephant Ink? Oh, it's just an online store, sweetie. It's an Etsy store. It's an Etsy store.
Christmas
I got you
present.
something. Yeah, Christmas presents. Trey from Kentucky says, gambling has been occurring for centuries. It's commonly called marriage. But don't.
I like it. I like it, man. To put a bow on the Shohei thing, for those that have just tuned in, could it have happened where money went missing out of a giant account? Do people have money, guys? Yes. Am I saying that there's no way that could happen? No. But I'm just saying, for baseball's case, if you want this game to save face, you've got to figure out a way. The MLB's camp, Shohei's camp, there's no way you can convince me that those two didn't convene before today's press conference. There's no way. They had to have.
The conversation is denied.
Yeah.
Bury this, and hopefully it goes away.
Absolutely.
But I guarantee you more will come out.
So you don't think it will?
That more will come out?
You don't think it'll go away?
No, I don't think it'll go away.
See, I do. I think it'll go away.
It'll go away. If you believe that Ippei Matsuhara is a liar, he's going to try to come out and save face again. He may try to come out and throw something even crazier at the crowd to see if he can get the attention and the narrative back. That'll be really interesting to see what continues to happen with this. I don't believe that we have heard the last of this. It's Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson, a brand new show here on the Fan Upstate. We appreciate the 181 people who are watching this stream right now across multiple platforms. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here and making our first day on this brand new show as exciting and special as it has been. We've covered an awful lot. Of course, we covered Clemson winning 2 games to get into the Sweet 16. They took really a lot of hatred and anger out on New Mexico in the first round. They almost gave it away against Baylor in the second round. It was an ugly game down the stretch, but Clemson managed to pull that one out. They were 2-5 going into this game in 1-possession games, and it got down to a 1-possession game with a minute to go. And shout out to RJ Godfrey and his ability to hit 4 clutch free throws down the stretch to seal that one away. Obviously, it doesn't look quite as close if you're just looking at the box score, but Clemson advances to face the Arizona Wildcats. And this right here, people, is going to be a completely different monster for Clemson to face in the Sweet 16. Arizona can score a lot.
Yeah, they can. Diesel, when we talk about like styles and matchups and postseason play, who was it earlier that called in and was talking about was it JD talking about needing an in-season tournament for college? because his point was that the tournament games are different than regular season. And to a degree, I agree with that. Like, I would say this on paper, you and I both know that Clemson probably is not as good as Arizona on paper. However, with the tournament being down to the Sweet 16 and Clemson knowing their strengths, I'm not saying like there's a way they can figure out how to beat Arizona from a coaching standpoint. I'm just saying if Clemson feels like they have a favorable matchup, with whatever that may be, maybe Clemson does have an advantage. For example, last night after the Baylor game, they were talking about on the broadcast PJ getting in the foul trouble, right? Well, one of the announcers, one of the broadcast crew members said that, look, when teams game plan against Clemson, PJ Hall is at the top of the scouting report. So teams are going to zone in on PJ, right? So when you look at the first two games, PJ really hasn't dominated in the tournament like he did at times during the regular season, Diesel. And what he was saying last night, the broadcast crew, what they were saying is, look, in the tournament, PJ's at the top. He's going to get the best defender. He's going to get the number one guy. And to flip that, what my point is, if Clemson can find a matchup against Arizona where PJ does have an advantage, a size advantage, maybe Clemson can keep this game relatively close, because just like PJ Hall has not performed well against the New Mexico and Baylor in the first two rounds, the way these tournaments go, the way the matchups and the styles go, you never know that if Clemson and Brownell do find a matchup that's favorable, maybe PJ Hall does find something to where he can really feel like he has a presence inside. Sometimes he'll run out to the three-point line and take some three-point shots that I don't necessarily love. I wish he would try to bang his way inside a little bit more. They tried to feed him last night there a couple of times. He had a couple of turnovers down low in the paint. But my point is, maybe there's a matchup, and maybe it's not PJ Hall. Maybe it's a Joe Girard. Clemson's best case scenario here is for them to find a matchup that's favorable to them, that they can exploit from Arizona, because no, on paper, they're not as talented. Arizona, as you said, Diesel, they do like to score. They're coached really well. So you've got, if you're Brad Brownell and you want to continue to I don't want to call them a Cinderella, but I guess if they made the Elite Eight, they would be considered a Cinderella. If you want this dream season to continue, you've got to find something right now while you're getting ready in these next 3 days before this Thursday game that you feel like you can exploit. And I'll be interested to see, Diesel, what they feel like they can do here in Brownell's comments leading up to the game, because you're right. Baylor was good, but I do feel like Arizona is a blue blood that's going to be a different task for the Tigers.
Well, certainly they're gonna double and triple PJ as much as they possibly can. It's gonna fall on Chase Hunter and Joe Girard. And hey, we've seen Clemson win in a close, slog it out kind of finish.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can keep Arizona from scoring, what they're averaging is 87.5 points a game.
That's a lot.
If they can bring that average down, even down to 75, if they can hold them to 12 points under their season average, then maybe they have a chance. When we come back, we're going to wrap this thing up. It's been a great first show, Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. We'll finish it up on the other side here on The Fan Upstate. It's Wire to Wire, a brand new show on. Ooh, see, I almost did it.
You almost said it, but you didn't. So it doesn't count, does it?
I set an over/under on 4.5 times in the first week that I would say the old show name.
I don't think that counts.
That does, I went. Does it count?
No, I'm not going to count it for you. I think you're good.
Okay, I'm still good. I thought I would go over 4.5.
I'm going to say under.
I truly did. After 4, 5+ years of saying one thing every single time we come on and off these airwaves, it's easy to fall into that habit.
Hey, can I say something real quick before we get to the audio? All right. Have noticed Steven, several guys on the stream, and we're going to continue to pick up traffic on the stream. We're almost at 200 right now, but I've seen several comments about P1, and we so much appreciate our P1s, but big butt. You like a big butt, Diesel?
I do. I am a butt guy.
I mean a big butt. I mean I have a big butt. Our P1s are the absolute best. But you got to say it with some emphasis right there.
But
Diesel and I have something stay tuned, P1s. We want you to turn it on and leave it on. More to come on that in the coming days. Thank you for my public service announcement there, Diesel.
Yeah, and look, a lot of topics on the show today. Clemson making it to the Sweet 16. Is Brad Brownell safe? South Carolina's disappointing showing. We hadn't been on the air since their disappointing showing against Oregon to talk about it. We talked about Shohei Ohtani and legal struggles, but let's get into some audio from the sports world. Let's get here to the final call of Baylor and Clemson, the final seconds of that game. Here's what that sounded like.
8 seconds left. Here comes Dennis.
That is Brad Brownell's second. We got to figure out what's going on there.
Little echo.
Second Sweet 16 in his tenure. Congratulations to Brad Brownell for achieving that. I don't necessarily.
I was going to say, don't congratulate him, Diesel, because you don't feel like he should be congratulated.
His job, and if we're going to continue having these echo issues, maybe we just don't fire any more audio.
That's okay. I got it
until we can get that figured out. Let's see here. We got. This was the exciting one from last night. From Texas A&M, Anderson Garcia heaving up a buzzer-beating 3 to send the game versus Houston to overtime.
That was a great game, by the way.
It really was. My wife and I watching that game, she said, oh, my God, they're going to make this and send this to overtime.
That was great.
And they did. She called it. She's a smart lady.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why she married me, but she is a smart lady. Guys, it has been an absolute blast to be on the show today. We still have a couple of minutes here, and we want to catch up on some of the things that you guys have been saying throughout the show today. It is real easy as things get chaotic and going fast on this show to miss out on some of the things that you guys are saying.
Especially today.
That's one of those things that we are going to get better at over time, catching up on what you guys have to say. But hey, I just want to let you know, we are going to be implementing a new rule on this show. You must, if you want your text to be read on the air, you must text in on topic. Because people love to take you off topic, and it's real easy. I'm bad about that. I will go down any rabbit hole at any given time.
Yeah.
And I am bad about staying on topic. So a new rule on this show. You text in on topic, your text gets read immediately. You text in off topic, guess what? We hold it till the end of the show.
I like that.
Texter says, not every step forward is progress, especially if you stand on the edge of a cliff. We aren't whining, we are defending. If you want all of these, this is a long text message here. If you want all of these folks here, let them live with you. So this goes way back. Okay, this is
Yeah,
from
to our
Raven. This is all about the people moving here to the upstate. Not every step is forward progress, especially if you stand on the edge of a cliff. We aren't whining, we are defending. If you want all these folks here, let them live with you. Why not? No room, same situation. Quoth the Raven.
That's deep.
Yeah, I just no.
That's deep.
Just no on that.
No
Raven.
comment from me on that.
People move here to the upstate because, well, it's America and you're legally allowed to move wherever you want. We don't put up walls that shut people out. That's not what we do. That's not who we are as Americans. So I don't believe in making yourselves intentionally inhospitable and try to keep people out. That's just not what we do. It's especially not why the upstate is so popular and growing the way that it is. Let's see. Texter says, I agree with Diesel. It's charming when foreigners learn English. For example, in The Christmas Story, the Chinese restaurant learned how to sing Christmas carols. Look, all I'm saying is he wouldn't have had an interpreter to steal money from him, Shohei Ohtani, that is, if he didn't have or didn't need an interpreter at all.
You know what burns my biscuits on this whole thing? Like, I'm not saying we should go full NIL and just have no rules, but like the NFL and MLB and even NBA, and there was just some breaking news about an NBA player getting into another gambling situation. But what bothers me so much is the fact that these leagues get in bed, Diesel, with the gambling companies, with FanDuel, with Better, all these, you name them, line them up. MLB gets in bed with them. The NFL gets in the bed with them. The NBA gets in the bed with them. But the moment somebody gambles that plays, it turns into this. I'm not saying that pro athletes should be able to gamble, but I am saying, like, you caused this. Like, you have literally, NFL, you have literally put gambling machines into an NFL stadium, but you're telling the players they can't gamble. Like, I'm not saying they should be able to, but I'm just saying, like, you've kind of made this bed yourself, you know?
One of my all-time favorite movies, Cole. Maybe you've seen it, Devil's Advocate.
I have not.
Keanu Reeves.
I love Keanu Reeves, though.
Pacino is the devil in this movie. It's pretty obvious early on, so I'm not spoiling anything. And this movie came out in the mid-90s, so sorry. But one of my favorite lines from that movie is when the devil is talking about temptation.
Okay.
And he says, one of the greatest cons we ever pulled is dangling it in front of your face and then pulling it away because it makes you want it even more.
Right.
He says, we say things like, look, but don't touch. Touch, but don't taste.
Yeah.
Taste, but don't swallow. That's where we are with the NFL and all these major leagues getting in bed with gambling. One piece of breaking news that we did not get to on the show today is that Georgia transfer running back Trevor Etienne was arrested for DUI.
You know, Steve Spurrier said it best, Diesel. What did Spurrier say a few years ago? I say a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago now. He's been gone so long. Steve Spurrier said it best. The best time to play Georgia is when?
Early in the season.
Early in the season, because they have players suspended. And guess what? He's still right.
Charges include reckless driving, affixing materials that reduce visibility of windows, which means too much window tint, failure to maintain lane, and DUI. Ouch. It's going to be a tough one there for Georgia, especially, we know that they have a reputation for the street racing and all that stuff going on with the football program. Just a bad look for Travis Etienne as he makes his way onto a new team. So, guys, this show has been an absolute blast on the very first day, and we appreciate Madcraft and Trebo and Stephen Webb and James and JD Wyatt and Rob Brown and everybody who got into the stream on our very first show. Man, did we hit 200? Do you know if we hit 200?
I don't know, but I know we were close
right now.
We were
We are
close.
12 away. And I guarantee you, damn it, as we get better at this each and every day, we're going to have more and more people jumping into the stream.
Diesel, listen, we said it not 100% serious, but we do say it tongue in cheek. Our first show is going to be our worst because we are going to continue every day to make this show better and better and better. And that's what we want, and we will do it. We so much appreciate you being a part of it today.
Coming up on tomorrow's show, you will get Atlanta Braves talk.
Let's
something
go.
that you haven't gotten a ton of on this show and on this station.
I'm ready.
On this show. Sorry, Rob, no offense. You're going to get some Atlanta Braves talk on the show tomorrow, right here on Wire to Wire. I'm Diesel. He's Cole Bryson, and this is the Fan Upstate.
See you tomorrow.